I am Heather Cooper Ortner. I'm the president and CEO here at Alzheimer's Los Angeles, and I have the very good fortune of working with an amazing team of professionals and our extended family of professionals out in the community serving all of you. I know you're going to have a really impactful and very enjoyable program with our special speakers this morning. I want to say a very, very special thank you to the Alzheimer's Los Angeles staff, especially to Cassandra Rivera, who is our senior care counselor for early stage programs, and she will be moderating today's program. You just heard from Xiomara Lara, who is also a care counselor for early stage clients. And a special thank you to Carmine Tawagan, our amazing development manager who they all worked diligently over the last few months to make today a major success for all of you, to bring you this important update and program filled with information that we know you're going to find very useful. I also want to thank our sponsors and all of you who have made donations as you registered. So first of all, many thanks to Eli Lilly and Company for their sponsorship of today's event, Elliot and Marcia Sainer, who also sponsored today's event. And for those of you who made donations as you registered, you should know that you could collectively contributed almost $1,500 already. That is a significant amount of money, and we are very, very grateful for everybody who contributed. And it just goes to show that even small donations add up to make a big impact for our organization, and we're grateful for every donation. Alzheimer's Los Angeles is heading toward our 45th year, and we have recognized for many, many years that people who are dealing with memory concerns may feel frustrated, alone, frightened. Today's program is designed after all of those years of listening and hearing and learning from people with memory loss in early stages to address those concerns. We held our first early memory loss conference in 2007, and this program has certainly evolved. It used to be in person, and we now find that we have far more of you in attendance by doing it virtually. So we welcome you to our annual virtual early memory loss conference. While we're not in person, we know that you will still find this opportunity to connect and to learn very enriching and rewarding. Throughout the day, you'll hear about many resources available to you, and I hope you'll reach out to us if you're interested in our special groups for people with early stage Alzheimer's or another dementia, or our counseling program. Please also consider joining a future session of our Memory Club. Memory Club is an award-winning program designed to provide tailored information and support for people with early memory loss in a safe and supportive environment. And this includes not only the person with early memory loss, but their care partners as well. And people who participated in Memory Club have described it as life-changing. So we encourage you to reach out to our professionals, our team of professionals, to see if that's something that might be appropriate for you. I hope you really enjoyed today and find the information that will be shared helpful, informative, and empowering. It is now my pleasure to introduce Cassandra Rivera, who will help introduce our first speaker. Thank you all again for being here.
Thank you so much, Heather. And as Heather said, we're so honored to have you join us for this meaningful day of connection, education, and shared experience. Today, you'll hear from experts, care partners, and individuals with lived experience who remind us that early memory loss is not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new chapter filled with support, purpose, and community. If you feel moved by what you hear today, we invite you to consider making a contribution. Your support helps us keep programs like this accessible, impactful, and inclusive for all who need help. Thank you for being here. I hope you get a taste of what our services have to offer you and walk away with increased knowledge about dementia and the available resources to you. Now let's begin. I'd like to introduce and welcome our first speaker, Rebecca Goldfarb, a highly respected elder law attorney and partner at Goldfarb and Lew. She's a longtime partner, and we're so happy to have her with her years of experience in estate planning, long-term care, and legal advocacy for aging adults and their families. Rebecca is a passionate voice in protecting the dignity and rights of older adults. Today, she'll be sharing essential insights on legal planning for memory loss and the aging journey. Welcome, Rebecca.
I'm always so happy to be here. So thank you to everyone. And I'm so glad that all of you are here. I do miss the days that we were in person instead of looking at this little green dot on my computer for the camera. But I'm glad more people can attend. So I think I have a PowerPoint that's going to start. I also don't have any control on this side. So I am an estate and elder law lawyer, and I also have Alzheimer's that runs in my family. So I've helped care for a bunch of different people, not just Alzheimer's folks in my family. And so I can tell the difference, and Heather mentioned, and Cassandra, the different groups that are a part of Alzheimer's LA. And I can tell you the difference when my grandpa had it a very long time ago in the late 80s and passed away in the early 90s. There were no support groups. Nobody talked about it. And I am sure he was in isolation. So the difference with the memory clubs and groups is night and day for the person who has it, for the family and friends who are supporting and caring for them. So I encourage you to check them out. They're just really magical places. Okay, I have so much to talk about today. I am going to talk really fast. It's being recorded. You'll also get the slides, although I do have one update to make before they get sent out. So we can begin. So I already thanked you. So the roadmap for today is we're going to talk about the basics of estate planning. There are a lot of fatal flaws. So many of you may have estate plans already. I promise you will learn something. We'll talk about what elder law is, and then there'll be different action checklists and then resources as well. Next. So step one is to put your own oxygen mask on first. Next. I think for those of you who have been through the process of establishing your estate plan, you may kind of wonder, well, what is the purpose? So our definition here is it's a bunch of different documents together that will honor your wishes, avoid court, and most importantly, maintain family harmony. Next. The only problem is 99% of the estate plans we review that people bring to us have a fatal flaw in one of those areas. And unfortunately, people have no idea of this, obviously. Next. So estate planning 101, this is just a very simple slide. There are 4 main documents in an estate plan. The first one is your advanced healthcare directive. This is where someone has legal authority to make decisions for you, and you should have lots of details in there about what your wishes are, especially if you're here because you have a diagnosis, and it's really important that your wishes are articulated in advance so that when you can't articulate them, then everyone knows what to do for you and how to honor you. The next one is your power of attorney for finance and legal matters. And these take effect when you can't make decisions, but they both end when you pass away. So I think if I say next, a little pop-up's going to come up. So if you're over 18, you need these documents because your parents can't make decisions for you. A spouse can't make them legally for you. You can't make them for an aging parent. So it's really important. This has nothing to do with how much money you have. It just means you're over 18. And I promise if I could see you, if we were live and in person, all of you are over 18. So that means every person here needs an advance directive and power of attorney. On the other side, the trust and will. So they both say who gets your stuff when you die. except wills go through probate and trusts do not if they are funded correctly. So you're going to hear me say this probably 5 more times, if they are funded correctly. Next. So if you have some assets and or kids or special needs beneficiaries or people who just aren't good with money, then you definitely want to trust. Otherwise, maybe a will suffice. Next. And I guess the myth that I hear all the time when people call us is, oh, my family will just take care of it, don't worry. But unfortunately, even though they could take care of it, it might require court and cost a lot of money, and we want to avoid that. Next. So the problem is people either don't have a plan when they need it, or the plan doesn't work when they need it. Next. So I'm going to give you a bunch of examples. I wish I had more time because I'd tell you all kinds of kind of horror stories of things when they go wrong, but I'll keep it as concise as possible today. So we see a lot of outdated documents. People create their estate plan and they do it a whole, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 30 years ago, and things have changed. The people in their lives have changed. I just spoke to somebody this week and we looked through everyone. Almost every single person in there had passed away. So we really need to keep these updated if people in our lives change. Also, our wishes could change and the laws change. So for those reasons, it's important to look at your documents about every 5 years, or if you have a life change, right? A marriage, a divorce, a diagnosis, or just a falling out with someone. We see, unfortunately, a lot of missing documents. So if you've gone to a lawyer to do this, which is appropriate, sometimes they still don't create all the documents. As a matter of fact, when I created my first trust with my husband, long before I even was a lawyer, he only created a trust. There was no advance directive. There was no power of attorney. There was no pour over will. There was no discussion of funding. There was no discussion that you even needed any of these things. It was ridiculous. So we see a lot of missing documents, and it's important to have all of them. They all work together. We see, unfortunately, a lot of confusing documents where the lawyer just didn't ask enough details or write comprehensively or write in a way that everyone could interpret it the same way. So that's really important. We also see that the trust isn't funded. So I said that I would talk about this several times. This essentially means if you create a trust, and then you have all these assets. You have a house, you have bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement accounts, whatever, life insurance, whatever it is, the annuities, whatever you have. You may at the back of your trust, so for those of you who have trusts after we're done today at 1 o'clock, go look at your trust. Look at the last page. See if there's a schedule. It's called a schedule A, B, or C, depending upon your situation. See if there's a schedule, and you're going to see all these assets listed there. And you, as the client, think, oh, that means these are the assets in my trust because it's attached to your trust. That's not what it means. It means it's a snapshot of the assets that you had at the time you created the trust. It has nothing to do with retitling them into the trust name with you as trustee. That's how you fund the trust. So you do a new deed, you do a new beneficiary designation, you do a new ownership designation, you have an investment account and it's in your name. You transfer that into maybe a new account, or maybe they just change the name. It depends on the financial institution. It is critically important to fund the trust, or your estate may end up in court after you're gone. We see people picking the wrong people as fiduciaries all the time. So if you are picking someone because they're your eldest child, but they suck with money, don't pick them as the trustee. Don't pick them as the power of attorney. If you pick someone as the advance directive agent and they're kind of timid around doctors, don't pick them. If they're not going to be a zealous advocate and stand up for you and get second opinions and make sure you're getting the right care that you deserve, don't pick them. All right, I could go on, but I know I have so many slides. So the last one here is, if you do this on your own, you're probably going to make mistakes. All of you have had careers that I probably know nothing about. And if I tried to do what you did or do on your own without any support from you, I would probably fail as well. So please, please, please hire someone who does this as their expertise. Next. So the solution to that problem that I mentioned earlier is to find the right firm that will educate and empower you and collaborate with you. We know the law, we know how it's going to play out, but you know the people and you know your wishes and will help you discover those wishes. Hopefully you build a lifelong relationship with your estate planning and elder law lawyer because things change and you want to be comfortable to be able to reach out whenever you need them. Next. So what if you become incapacitated? Next. Here are the fatal flaws. I'm going to go through this with each document that we see. We think that the Advanced Healthcare Directive is the most important document in your entire estate plan because you are now unable to speak for yourself, unable to make medical decisions. It is your body. This is the only thing we've got. It is your life, and you will have some strong wishes. But if they are not memorialized or you have not picked the right person, they may not get honored. So there's always two sides of this coin that I talk about. One is with our clients. One is what your wishes are. Those are really important. And the other is what is the burden on the people you're caring for? And so when things are really laid out well and you've thought through this in a really comprehensive, thoughtful way, then you're addressing both sides of that coin. If you just fill in the blank on these regular old advanced directives, even when attorneys create them, they're fill in the blanks, you are doing a disservice not only to you so that your wishes may not get honored, but you are burdening the people you love the most to make these decisions, and that's not fair. So these are fatal flaws that we usually see. People pick the wrong people, and so the right people, they should, no matter what, be able to put their wishes aside to honor yours. Sometimes that's hard. They should also be local or be able to be here. They should be able to stand up to doctors. I know a doctor or two. My parents are actually on this right now for the first time listening to me, and my mom is a doctor, and she's fabulous. And I have learned how to advocate because she has helped so much in this area, but a lot of people don't have a resource like that in their family. So you have to really be strong and get those second opinions and make sure the nurses and everybody's following up if you're in the hospital, if your loved one is in the hospital. So it's really important to pick someone who can do that. And I always say, most importantly, if your loved one is in the hospital, treat those nurses really well because the second you walk out of the door, they are the ones caring for your loved one. Next is springing powers. This is both in the advanced directive and the power of attorney for finance. So this means that, and a lot of documents are springing. As a matter of fact, I spoke to a lawyer not too long ago who had been practicing for 40 plus years, and she said, I can count on my hand the number of times that I have made my documents immediate and not springing. And mine is the inverse. I can count on my hand the times I've made them springing instead of immediate. So here's what it means. You sign your advanced directive, power of attorney, your trust, everything. It is now a legally effective document. But when these powers are springing in the advanced directive and power of attorney, it means we are relying on someone to deem you incapacitated in order for this to work, in order for you to have the power to help. Unfortunately, and we have two doctors who are going to talk today. I don't know that they'll be addressing what I'm saying, but we're having a really hard time getting doctors to sign declarations saying someone is incapacitated. Some of these documents require two doctors to do it. Some require the court to do it. So it is really important. I have been told by folks at UCLA, they won't sign the cap decks. I've been told at Kaiser, they won't sign the cap decks. So we as the lawyer spend a lot of time and money trying to get this done. And if we can't, then you have to hire a geriatric psychologist or psychiatrist, and thousands of dollars. So while I'm not your attorney today, I will say you should go to your attorney and you should talk through this issue of springing or immediate and find what's right for you. It's also really important to have a HIPAA waiver. This is the Federal Privacy Act. The CMIA is the state version. You need to have a HIPAA waiver because you want the medical community to talk to your agent. If you don't have that, technically, they're violating that and there's a fine. Will they violate it? Do they violate it? Yes, but let's set you up for success and not potential failure. So unfortunately, the insufficient detail part of this is universal. There's just not enough detail in here, not enough guidelines and instructions. And the last part is there's this thing called a POLST. It's the Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. It replaced the DNR. If you do not want to be resuscitated, this means you have died. Do you want to stay dead, or do you want, if you call 911 or you're in the hospital, wherever you are, do you want them to perform CPR? If you do not, then you should get this Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. We all call it a POLST, and I have a slide on it. Next. This is it. Next. Okay, so if you do not want to be resuscitated, then that first check, it says do not attempt resuscitation. That's what you check. The next box in that B section, you have to decide between selective and comfort. I think of comfort like hospice, and selective is when you want IV antibiotics. So you have to talk with your doctor and with your family or with your partner or whomever and decide what is right for you. This is supposed to be posted on the door in the front door, so that if you, not outside, on the inside, if someone calls 911 and you are found dead, first responders know when they come in to look for this POLST. I have a lot of stories about this, but I don't have time to share it. If you haven't died, or if you are resuscitated for whatever reason, then let's say you fall and break your hip, right? Or something. You go to the hospital, take this POLST with you and put it up there. You go to rehab, take it and put it there. You go back home, take it and put it back home. You want this to follow you. The DNRs that people used to have ended up in people's safe deposit boxes, and nobody could access them. Nobody knew what your wishes are. This is a very important document. Next. Okay, we're done with healthcare. Now we're going to talk about money and legal concepts. So if you are unable to make decisions about your finances and or any legal matters that are happening, you have to have a durable power of attorney. This means that someone can make these decisions for you. And it's really important, although it doesn't have as many details as the advance directive should, it's really important that we talk about a few concepts. So the first one is same thing, picking the wrong people. If you're picking someone who doesn't ever open their mail and they're always late on their bills, don't have them be your power of attorney. A lot of people, I see this, a lot of people will pick two people together because they have two kids and they're like, I want them to do it together. They'll figure it out. Okay, don't do that. First of all, certain financial institutions will no longer accept co-agents in a power of attorney, also in a trust. They will not accept that. And so you get to that point where you need to use it, and one kid has to step down. That is a very awkward place. And they're grieving because either they're caring for you or you've passed away. Don't put them in that situation. Pick the right person. The right person is someone who's on top of their stuff financially. They are also not in need of you financially. We do not want any potential conflict here where they could access the money for themselves instead of you. So they have to be self-sufficient financially. Springing power is exactly the same thing, but there's a big difference. So I tell clients, give out that advance directive as soon as you sign it, because you might need, in an emergency situation in the hospital, you might need that person to make decisions for you right away. They need to have access to that document. That is not the case for a power of attorney for finance. Nothing urgent is going to happen. So I keep these. I mean, our clients have their original versions as well, but I tell them, please introduce me to your family or whoever's next in line. And if something happens to you, A, I want to know because then I can be a resource and of service. And B, I want to be the one to determine, is this the right time to give this document out? Because if it is immediate and not springing, someone could go to the bank and do something nefarious, and we don't want that to happen. Now, hopefully you're not picking anyone who would be tempted by that, but it's just a safety precaution. Also, you might change the powers, right? And you don't want these documents floating around. In California, it is very specific that if you want your power of attorney to be able to access separate property, we're a community property state, so this is only if you're married that you should be listening. And so let's say, for example, I have separate property and I'm incapacitated and my husband is my power of attorney. Am I willing, now as I draft this document, am I willing to have him access my separate property, not for me, but maybe for him, maybe for the family, right? Then I have to enumerate that in the document that he has access to my separate property. Similarly, if I want anyone to be able to give gifts, now not my spouse because we have community property and he could give gifts if he wanted to, but if let's say I'm helping support somebody in my life, a cousin, right? Then I need to have the ability in the document, my next in line, not my husband, but my next in line has to have the ability to give gifts to help support that person. And otherwise, the power of attorney exclusively must use the money for me. So it's really important that this gifting authority, it could also, a gift, a legal term of art gift is filling out a beneficiary designation. So this could avoid court if we did that. So it's really, really, really important to talk to your attorney about this gifting authority. This also could come into play with Medi-Cal. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I just want you to know logins and passwords are a mess for almost everyone. Please get those organized. Please have a list of all the bills that you pay and what credit cards are auto-paid or accounts are auto-paid when they're due. Please have a list of all of your logins and passwords. This is what has powers of attorney pulling their hair out because they can't get it. They need to know the password to your phone, to your computer, to your password manager, right? To your email, to your Apple iCloud, right? Yeah. No, Apple ID or iCloud or whatever so that they can take over and help when needed. Remember that each financial institution has their own power of attorney. So yes, we create a general durable power of attorney that can be universally used, but every financial, you have Wells Fargo, you have Chase, you have Fidelity, you have Schwab, whatever it is, they all have their own CalPERS. They all have their own power of attorney as well. So either while someone has capacity, fill it out now at each institution, or make sure that you give yourself some time because you're going to send the attorney drafted power of attorney once someone's lost capacity. You're going to send it and it's going to go to their legal department and you're going to have to follow up 2 or 3 times. It's going to take several weeks and then you'll be able to have access. Next. So what happens if somebody passes away? I used this slide for probably 2 years before I ever noticed all the weapons behind them. So in my line of work, you've got to have a sense of humor. Otherwise, we're just sort of crying all day, and that's no fun. So people fight over things, over dumb things. I asked a probate judge many years ago. I never go to court, but my law partner does. I asked a probate, he was doing like a presentation, and I said, what is the smallest thing you've seen fought over in court? And it was a grandma's green bowl, like serving platter, right? People fight over things. Next. Okay, so this is one of the slides I have to fix. California has simplified, they say, the probate process. So I'm not going to read this whole slide, but I wanted you to have it for later. And essentially what used to trigger probate in California is if you had over $184,500 that did not have a joint owner or beneficiary designation, or you had real estate that was over $50,000, it would trigger probate. If you have a trust and you have that much outside of the trust without a beneficiary or a joint owner, it will also trigger a court process. So now, as of April 1st, the law has changed. And I spent so much time trying to figure this out, and it was really hard for me. It's confusing. So now what the law says is instead of where it says you can have property up to 184,500, as of April 1st, that number changed to $208,850. So that means you can have, say you don't own any real estate, you can have up to $208,850 outside of a trust or just not in a trust, having nothing to do with a trust. And we can use what's called a small estate after you're gone to give it to the right people. Now, the big thing that changed is that if you have a primary residence that is worth up to $750,000, there is a simplified court process. It still requires court. It's still several $1,000s, but it's not a full probate. And if that's the case, then we can transfer that without a trust. I still recommend a trust because there are so many wild cards in here and requirements that I think it's leading to a mess and more expense than is necessary. But this is the new law as of April 1st. Next. So whether you need a will or a trust, if you don't have a lot of assets, under this 208,850, and you do accurate beneficiary designations, you are responsible to make sure that those are updated and correct, and you have a copy of them with your other estate documents. It is really, really important because like TD Ameritrade was bought by Schwab was it last year or the year before? And do you think every single beneficiary designation got transferred properly? I guarantee it didn't. So it is your responsibility to maintain that. If you are okay that your beneficiaries get immediately outright after you're gone, fine. Remember, if you have kids, when they turn 18, there will be a custodian named by the court, usually, to have someone manage the money until the kid is 18. But then your kid's getting it at 18, or your grandkid. Do you know any 18-year-old who can handle $5,000, let alone 50 or more? So if there are minor kids, I really suggest a trust. So the trust is if you have real estate. I know this new law changed, but I say any real estate, you should have a trust. If you want to sprinkle these assets over time, if you want to give some upon, graduating or turning 25 or for certain purposes, we can do that in a trust. You can't do that in a will. If you have kids or grandkids who might not be great with money, you definitely want to sprinkle these over time, have some conditions. I have a lot in my trust. If you have anyone you want to give to who has special needs, you must have a trust. You must have a special needs provision or a standalone special needs trust, or it will destroy their benefits. Next. So I include this slide, and I could spend almost an hour, especially with Q&A, going over this slide alone, but I don't have time now. So basically, it is important to marshal your assets. I talked about having a list of your logins and passwords and bills. You have to have a list of your assets, and you have to keep it updated. This is the gift that you're giving the people who will be helping you later on. It's important to fund your trust. If you have assets in your name with a beneficiary or not with a beneficiary, it is not going through your trust. So you need to make sure that if you have beneficiary designations on your assets that are outside of a trust, that still mirrors your goals in your trust. So for example, you have your trust and it says it goes to my kids equally, and I have 3 kids. You have a life insurance policy and you forgot to add the 3rd kid, or the 3rd kid wasn't born when you did it and it just goes to the 2 kids. Because there's beneficiary designations, it's not going to go through your trust and be distributed to your 3 kids equally. Similarly, people will add a spouse or a child to an asset. You have essentially given that entire gift to them right now. So they could run off with all the money in that account right now, but they probably won't. But more importantly, if they get in a car accident, do you think that PI attorney is going to find that account with your person's name on it? Absolutely. It's their money. That means that it could go to that debt or that claim. So it's super, super important to make sure you realize who the owner of the asset is. Is it the trust? Is it you? Who, if it's you, is there a beneficiary? Does that align with your goals and your trust? The trust could be the beneficiary, and then it would funnel through the trust. So I could go through this for a long time, but I have to say next right now. Next. All right, what is probate? This is the other slide I have to change. So probate is the public process to, you pass away, you have nothing, or you have a will. And that, if you have over this 208,850, then it's going to trigger probate. We have to find the original will in order to honor it. If not, then the law of intestacy takes over. So say you've been with your partner for 25 years, but you're not married. That person gets nothing, and it's going to go to your next of kin. What if your next of kin you've been estranged from for 20 years? Doesn't matter, going to that person. What if you don't have anyone? They're going to find some distant cousin you don't even know. And if that can't happen, it's going to go to the state of California. State of California has $8 billion in unclaimed property. By the way, go onto your browser and type California unclaimed property and do a search for everyone you know. You might find money. It's like finding $20 in your pocket, but it could be more. The probate process, the judge will name an executor, really called an administrator of the estate. This may be the person you want, may not be the person you want. It's super expensive. I'm going to show you the next slide. Your assets are frozen for a period of time. If your spouse is relying on them and they were in your name and it was really joint assets, but you didn't do it that, you didn't title it that way, those assets are frozen for months. We have to notify all creditors. You don't have to do that in a trust administration. So you have to notify all creditors. It takes 1 to 2 years to get through a probate if people aren't fighting. And it's a public process. Everyone knows your business. Next. So basically, this is the other slide I have to change to make it 208,850. Probate's really expensive. They're statutory fees. So it's just half goes to the lawyer, half goes to the administrator. That amount still goes up. Now, here's the big catch that people don't realize. If you have a house and you have a mortgage, you don't get to deduct the mortgage to come up with that number in column 2. It is the fair market value of your estate. So if you have $700,000 house, but you have a $600,000 mortgage, you have to count the full $700,000. It is so much more expensive and so awful for the people you care about to go through probate when you could just create a trust and avoid it altogether. Next. So how you avoid it is by having a trust. You want to make sure you've selected the right people as your successor trustees. You want to make sure it's well written. I know that's not really fair because it's hard for you to know if it's well written. It's all legalese and another language. You want to make sure your assets are in the trust, that you've funded the trust. And remember charities. Remember Alzheimer's LA. Everybody has been touched in their lives by some charity. And so it's important, even if you don't give a lot, to give something. So this is how we control from the grave, if you want, by having a trust. We can put all kinds of things in there, which I don't have time to go into all the details now. Next. So fatal flaws in trusts. you've picked the wrong trustees, right? Or you've picked co-trustees. And it's really important. I would say, I don't know if there are any CPAs listening, but I would say don't pick your CPA. They are so busy with so many tax deadlines. That is their wheelhouse. Being a trustee isn't their wheelhouse. And we find in our experience that a lot of the CPA trustees, it's really delayed because they're always on a deadline, which is totally reasonable for their profession. The funding is incomplete. I can't emphasize that enough because it happens almost 100% of the time. The funding is incomplete. Documents are ambiguous. Unfortunately, you don't want 2 or 3 different lawyers interpreting the language differently. We see a lot of financial abuse, financial elder abuse. So depending upon if the asset is in the trust or in the person's name determines who has access to it. If the asset is in the trust, it's the successor trustee who has access. If it's in your name as an individual, it's the power of attorney who has access. If you are married and if you created your trust already, it is really important. Call your lawyer on Monday morning or email him or her on Monday morning and say, do I have a mandatory A-B split trust? And if you do, you need to talk through with the lawyer why you have that, because most of the time you do not want that. It requires a trust administration be done when the first spouse dies. The surviving spouse doesn't have the same access potentially over what has been separated into that trust. You're paying taxes on an irrevocable trust, any income that's derived. It's a pain in the ass, and most people do not want it. And most lawyers never talk about it. They just create it. Most trusts do not have trust protectors. Trust protectors are third-party neutrals who will never be a trustee or beneficiary, but they act like the judge over your trust. So if anything goes wrong, they can fix a lot of things without us having to go to court. And if you have 4-legged children, it's important to include them in your trust. So we have pet trusts. There should be a pet caretaker. So it's important that you provide for them as well. Next. So trust administration, it's imperative that you hire a lawyer. Do not try to do this on your own. I don't know how other law firms practice, but we help people either in the bare bones minimum that we have to do in order to provide the legal notices and the waivers, legal notices at the beginning and waivers at the end, or help with everything in between, depending upon what the trustee needs. But it's very, very important to protect you as trustee that you hire a lawyer. So if everything is done well, then the trustee is good. We figure out the assets, we figure out the debts, we pay the taxes, we deal with the distribution, everyone gets along and moves on. If things are not set up right, the trustee is the wrong trustee, we have to go to court. It's to remove them. It's a nightmare. If the assets aren't in it, we have to maybe do a Hegstead or a full probate to get the assets in the trust. Then we deal with debts and taxes and distribution. And in the end, a lot of people don't talk to each other. And these can be siblings who have been best of friends their whole lives, and they will never speak again. And it is so sad. Next. So having a robust, regularly updated estate plan is the gift that you are giving the people you love. It's an investment for you and for them. Next. I know that if any of you are in the memory groups here, memory clubs, you have learned about caregiver burnout. If you have learned it in other places, it's common knowledge. It's really important to take care of yourself. I'm not going to go through all of these different things, but they're pretty self-explanatory. So it's very, very important that you get some support. Next. So there's 6 immediate things you can do. Create your village and care for yourself. Finish or update your estate plan. Share your wishes with your family. Talk about these things. Organize your assets. Make sure you fund your trust and update beneficiaries. And get your list of logins and passwords and bills. I know it's a pain in the ass. It's awful, but do it, please. And last, make sure your property is properly insured. I've been talking about this for a long time. I know so many people, as you do, who have been affected by these fires, who didn't have the right insurance. It's really important to make sure you're properly insured. This goes to car insurance, house insurance, an umbrella policy, all of it. Next. So I know it's this myth that my spouse or my kids will be able to take care of everything, but it's not the case. You need to get this all organized for them. Next. So next, elder law and doing the best you can. Next. So this is when we start needing permanent help. And for me in my practice, it's sort of 80% therapy and counseling and 20% law. Next. The common issues that we deal with are the caregivers totally overwhelmed by everything and needs some support from us. The person they're caring for is causing a lot of trouble and is difficult, and so, or there's family drama that's ensuing. Maybe the person doesn't have capacity anymore, so court is required. And then if you're running out of money, we talk about Medi-Cal. Next. So what is a conservatorship? If you don't have an advance directive, you don't have a power of attorney, and you lose capacity, you're headed to conservatorship. Next. A lot of people say, oh, I don't need it now. I'll deal with my advance directive and power of attorney when I need it. Well, when you need it means you've lost capacity and then you can't create it. So it has to be done now. The judge is deciding who takes care of you, who handles your finances. Can you vote? Can you drive? Can you continue with a professional license? You don't want this in front of a judge. You want this privately, and that's how you do it with an advance directive and power of attorney. Next. So conservatorship is extremely expensive. It's about $6,000 to $10,000 to start. There's an annual accounting for conservatorship over the estate. For the rest of your life, you're paying a lawyer to go before a judge, and you have to keep this accounting. If it could be contested by other family members who want to be the conservator, or the potential conservatee who doesn't want to be conserved, and so there could be a trial over this. It's always a last resort. If there's any way to avoid it, we do. Next. So sneak peek. So long-term care, as all of you know, is extraordinarily expensive. It is, $250,000 a year-ish to have 24-hour care at home. And then I have the other statistics there. Who pays for it? Medicare does not pay for this. Medicare does not pay for this. Medicare does not pay for this. We get these calls all the time. Medicare pays for, after you've been in the hospital for 3 days, they pay for up to that. Those are key words, up to 100 days in a rehab after this 3-day hospital. Now, what if your person where this has happened isn't making progress, isn't getting better? This is rehab. This is not long-term care, even if it's in the same type of facility. That means that every week, the whole team meets about your loved one. And they say, is he making progress? Is she making progress? Are we moving along? And they have to report to Medicare. If your person is not making progress, they will tell you with very little notice usually, oh, guess what? They're being discharged or it's private pay. So Medicare is not the solution to paying for long-term care. So Medi-Cal. Oh, there's long-term care. Some people have long-term care insurance, so that's very cool. That can help. But then there's Medicare. Medicare has always been, eligibility has been based on what your value is asset-wise, right? If you have too much money in your estate, you don't qualify. Well, in 2024, all of that changed, and it is now currently based on your income. So you could have $10 million in real estate and properties in a business that's not producing much income and qualify for Medi-Cal. So when they started talking about this in 2022 and 2023, I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't know how this is sustainable. So now fast forward to a couple months ago, the governor is now saying, oh, in 2026, we might go back to not based on income, but based on assets. And I read in an article, And so this is something evolving that we don't know the answer to yet. There will not be an exclusion may not be an exclusion for your house. So all these decades, your primary residence was excluded from this, how many assets do you have? That might not be the case anymore. This might mean we're going back to all these irrevocable trusts and this advanced Medi-Cal planning. I'm not sure yet. So stay tuned and pay attention to what this is. I also don't know if the law will be retroactive. So it could be just a mess. There are more issues, and obviously there's some VA aid and attendance benefits out there, but I know I'm going to run out of time, so I got to keep going. Next. The problem that we have is in this gray area of law when the person is making poor choices, but isn't eligible for conservatorship yet. And this is something that we get calls on every week about. And it's just being an outside of the box thinker and coming up with some plans. And it's tricky. Next. Oh, the solution, outside of the box law firm to help. Next. For those who still have capacity to make legal and financial and medical decisions, next. Here are 5 steps, and you can just list them. I want you, if you at all ever think that you might get a reverse mortgage, I want you to get 2 capacity declarations saying you have capacity and create at the same time a power of attorney. These reverse mortgages will require this later on. They already all require 1. Some are already requiring 2. So it's really important you have this in place. Otherwise, fast forward to when you're at home and your loved one needs to get this reverse mortgage, they won't be able to without this documentation. Finish your estate plan and update it. Make sure your advance directives and powers of attorney are immediate. Discuss this gifting authority and the power of attorney with your lawyer and get the support you need. Join one of the memory groups. Next. Oh, for the people who think you can do this online, don't try. Next. For those of you who are unable to make decisions because you're incapacitated, keep going, keep going. You're so fast. We might be headed to conservatorship, but there are 3 immediate things to do. One is, next, create the post. We already talked about that. Next. Marshal those assets. Next. And spend time with your family. Talk through your wishes. Hang out together. Have fun together. Next. Find your A-team. Find an elder law lawyer you like, who's savvy about Medi-Cal and trust administration and probate. Get your team of end-of-life experts, have a memorial plan, and get the support you need and counseling. Next. So we're almost done. There's all these checklists. You're going to get them. I have one favor to ask you. You have, I don't know how many people are here. Hold on. 165 people. If every single one of you tells 3 people you know about what you learned today, about the advance directive, about the power of attorney, about the trust and the will, and all of these issues, you will be saving people from our probate court system. Please, 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 please. Oh, look, there's a heart going up. Please do that. So any questions on resources, I will answer questions. I think I have a couple more slides. I'll answer questions, but also if you feel like you might have questions you don't want to ask on this format, if you want to reach out afterwards, I'm always happy to answer questions. Next. Oh, don't assume family and friends have this done. Next. Court sucks. I can't tell you enough. You don't want to end up there. You don't want your loved ones there. Next. And our 4 takeaways, don't wait. If you have anyone with special needs, you've got to get this done for them. Don't rely on court. You can do this. I know it. Next. This is a list. You don't have to read it now. You're going to get it. When you interview a lawyer, I want you to ask these questions. and hopefully you'll find a really good one. And I think that's it. Yes, next. Oh, yeah, just our info at the end. Okay, I went 3 minutes over.
You're good. Thank you so much, Rebecca. You always are so gracious with your time. And for those that have taken Memory Club, or if you do in the future, Rebecca is always open to our questions, and we're so lucky to have an expert in our corner. So I'm going to go to the chat and I'm going to ask some of the questions that I see. So our first one is, I've seen and heard about packages like Sue's Orman's must-have documents. What are the pros and cons of these?
I'm just going to say no. There's no legal advice. You can't fill these documents out without talking through it and learning how they work in reality. Don't use any of these online store-bought. It's a recipe for disaster.
All right. The next one says, where do you suggest we keep the list of logins?
Don't give it to your lawyer. And what I'd say is either use something like 1Password, where it's online and then there's one password to access it. It's very convenient once it's set up and really affordable. It's a couple dollars a month. Um, Otherwise, keep it in a very safe place. Don't put it in the file cabinet, logins and passwords. Put it in your favorite cookbook in the 300-page mark, whatever. But tell your power of attorney, whoever is next, tell them where you keep that list, and make sure you update it every time you have to add two-factor authentication, or add more characters or whatever. Make sure it's updated.
All right. And revocable versus irrevocable trust, which one?
So almost everybody wants a revocable trust. It means that you can change it when you want, as long as you have mental capacity. Irrevocable means you can't change it. So there are some trusts that start out by being irrevocable, like a special needs trust or an irrevocable life insurance trust. And those are done really for tax reasons, not for estate reasons. If you have a large estate, advanced planning will incorporate a lot of irrevocable trusts. But you should reach out to me afterwards if you feel like you should have an irrevocable trust, and I can answer more specifically if that's appropriate. But everyone really starts out with a revocable trust.
Okay. And then we also have, if the patient has a normal inter vivos trust with no special restrictions about how to amend this trust, then what are the California statutory trust amendment formalities? For example, two witnesses, notarized signature, etc.
Oh my God, no one has ever asked me that question. So first of all, an inter vivos trust just means that you created it while you were alive. A living trust, a revocable living trust, they all mean the same thing. And technically speaking, you can only amend it if you have capacity. If there are other things written in there, you have to follow them. And it should be executed, an amendment should be executed in the same way that it was originally executed. So if you notarized it, you need to notarize it. It's very rare that I see a witnessed trust. Witness wills, yes, but not a witness trust.
Okay. And then someone wrote, I think you said this, but is a will enough, or is it recommended to have both if there are real estate that's worth more than the money you mentioned?
So 100% with the real estate, you need a trust. With that trust, you will also get what's known as a pour over will. It's just a safety net that catches up to that 208,850 that's left outside. So you will have a trust and a pour over will.
Okay. And then how much does an elder law attorney cost? Are there low cost services for those who don't have a lot of money?
Unfortunately, there are resources out there, like BetCedec is amazing, but they have limitations in what they will do. So that's where I would start and see if they could help you. Otherwise, it is really expensive, I know, to hire a lawyer. If you have a particular question, I'm happy to answer it. So you can ask me, afterwards.
Okay. And then can you repeat the process for mental incapacitation? Does that put more responsibility, liability on the caretaker?
Not sure I understand that question.
Mm,
Um, do you mean yeah, I don't know. Can you email me afterwards and ask me that question and I'm happy to answer it. I just don't, I could go too many different directions. I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
okay. And then someone said well-funded trust. What does that mean again?
So if you have assets, your house, maybe your retirement account, life insurance, annuities, banking, investments, these assets should be funded into the trust, retitled into the name of the trust. So they're no longer owned by you, they're owned by your trust with you as trustee.
Okay. And then someone put, my child has Down syndrome. Do I need to get conservatorship for them because I don't want to get it?
Once your child, well, it depends where your child is on the spectrum of Downs, but once he or she turns 18, you probably need a conservatorship, and you definitely need a special needs trust. So if you have questions about that, you can ask me after. I'm happy to answer on the phone or in an email.
Okay. And we have a lot of questions regarding charges. So what is a reasonable charge or range for an attorney to create these types of documents?
That's such a hard question for me to answer. I'll tell you our fees and then I'll tell you kind of what's out there. So we now have, this is the first time I've ever said this. We now have two options. One is our life plan, which includes a lot more than just your documents. We start at $5,900 for an individual and $6,500 for a couple. When it's appropriate, and we're really picky about when this is appropriate because we have to do right by you. When it's appropriate, we have a much simpler version of all the documents, and that is, I think, 3,000 if you for an individual, 4,000 for a couple. If you own real estate, it's an extra 500, and so that's our lowest tier. I think that most colleagues of mine charge anywhere between 4,000 and 8 to 9,000. So I think anyone who's less than 4, I'd be a little nervous.
Okay, thank you. I have had an amendment to my trust by one attorney, which is not available currently. Is it okay to have another amended made by another attorney?
You mean, so I think what that meant is the attorney isn't available anymore. So yes, you can switch to anyone. Remember, if you make an amendment to your trust where it's not a restatement, a brand new one essentially with the same name, you have to keep the original and all of the amendments. So in our firm, 2 is the maximum amendments we'll do. It makes for a sloppy administration, but you can go to someone and if they will stand behind the trust and the amendment, they'll do another amendment. If they look at it and they say, "Oh, I don't know," they're going to want to restate it.
Okay. And then we just have 2 more minutes. I think we just have 2 more questions, but as Rebecca said, if you guys have any more after this, you can email her or call our helpline and we'll make sure you get connected. So rather than funding an asset to the trust, can you use the trust as a beneficiary?
Yes. That is a form of funding the trust. It just doesn't happen until you're gone. But absolutely.
And then some have asked, what about a review charged for a trust? To review a trust, how much do you charge?
I don't know what other people charge because I have never asked this question, but we either, depending upon the situation, either charge hourly to do it, and it takes about an hour or so for my paralegal at $325, and then my time to review it with you at $525, or we charge a flat rate of $9.95 for the our paralegal to review everything and my couple-hour meeting that it takes to kind of go over everything. But in certain situations, hourly is more fair for our clients, and so I'll do that. But if it's more fair to have the flat fee to our clients, then I do that.
Okay. I think that's all our questions. Oh, I think it kind of aligns with that. Do you do reviews for documents created by other firms?
We do. We do.
Okay. So that's all our questions today, Rebecca. Thank you so much again for your time. And we always look forward to having you in Memory Club again.
I'm so excited to be here, and I hope everybody learned at least one new thing. That's my goal each time I do this. And I get to hear from the doctors. I'm super excited. I'm going to be here the whole time.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody.
And now our next presenter is Dr. Dung Trin. He's Chief Medical Officer of the Healthy Brain Clinic. Dr. Trin is a leading expert in dementia prevention, brain health, and integrative approaches to cognitive care. His work bridges medical science with community education to empower families and individuals in proactive brain health strategies. We're honored to have him share his knowledge today. And Dr. Trin always loves to connect with his audience, and he is going to keep the chat open. He does it very informal in his process, and we love that about him. We know it's hard to have the time to be able to ask doctors directly all our questions. So without further notice, I'd like to welcome Dr. Trin and for him to just share everything he has about brain health and prevention.
Can you guys hear me now? Good morning, everyone. All right. Happy Saturday. Did you like my glasses? I normally don't wear glasses at all, but getting a little older. So it's like, can I read the screen here and the comments? I think I can without the glasses with that, but if not, I'll put them on. Good to see everyone. And I did learn a lot about long-term care and all that, so thank you very much. Definitely learned more than one item, and I hope to help you guys learn the science of Alzheimer's today, as well as early detection and the importance of early detection. You can, Francis, you can ask questions right here in the chat box, guys. So right here in the chat box, you can definitely put in your chats, your comments, your questions. I have it open, I see it, and I will try to address it live as I can as we go on with that. The first question I have for everyone here is this, and you can type in your answer in the chat box. How many of you on an annual basis get a memory assessment from your doctor? Type yes or no. No if you don't, yes if you do. I'm just curious. Okay, it looks like lots and lots of no's. All right. So, okay. So that's a problem with early detection, isn't it? Do you think that's a problem with early detection if we are not even looking for memory issues? Do you think that's a problem with early detection when we are not even looking for memory issues? The other thing I want to address is I've been getting a lot of questions lately about the latest FDA-approved blood test. It is an Alzheimer's blood test. Yes or no? How many of you guys have heard that the FDA just approved the first blood test to look for Alzheimer's? Yes or no? I'm curious on where we're all at here. So probably about 50-50. So I'll answer that question for you as well about what this blood test is all about, and who it's for, who it's not for, what it can do, what are the limitations of the blood test. Sounds good? Because the FDA did recently, just a few weeks ago, I think 2-3 weeks ago, approve the first blood test for Alzheimer's. Very exciting stuff. and it actually changes the way we diagnose, or hopefully will diagnose, Alzheimer's in the future. My next question for you is this: yes or no? How many of you guys have heard about the Alzheimer's plaque that builds up in the brain? Yes or no? Okay, we have an educated audience. The majority of you guys have heard about it. What is the name of that plaque? Who knows the name of that plaque? Type it down if you know the name of that plaque. Let's see. I saw tau, I saw amyloid, tau. Okay, very cool. So amyloid and tau are two proteins that are associated with Alzheimer's. So if you have the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, the protein amyloid and the protein tau is there in your brain 100%, right? If you have a true diagnosis of Alzheimer's, those two proteins, the plaques and the tangles, we call it, right? The amyloid plaque, the beta amyloid plaque versus the tau tangles, they're both in your brain 100% if you have that diagnosis. Are you guys following me so far? Type in yes if you're following me so far and you're understanding what I'm saying. I don't want to lose anyone as we are talking about the science, right? We don't want to lose anyone with that. Okay, here's another fact. If you don't have the plaques and the tangles in your brain, if it's not there, right? So if the beta amyloid and the tau tangles is not there in your brain, you do not have Alzheimer's, period. Does that make sense to you guys so far? The plaques and the tangles is required for the diagnosis. If the plaques and tangles is not in your brain, you do not have Alzheimer's. Does that make sense so far to you guys? Want to make sure that everyone's caught up with the science here. Okay? Now, it does not mean you don't have memory problems. You can have memory problems without the plaques and tangles because you can have cognitive problems from other types of dementia. Okay? And so yes, the answer is you need the plaques and tangles to have the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. If you don't have the plaques and tangles, you don't have the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, but you can still have other memory problems. You can still have other reasons for dementia. So let me break down for you real quick. Dementia is a big umbrella, right? The big umbrella with all types of memory and cognition issues. And under this umbrella, probably 2/3 of the umbrella, of the dementia umbrella, is Alzheimer's dementia. The other 1/3 of this dementia umbrella is non-Alzheimer's type of dementia. So you can still have memory problems with or without plaques, okay? The plaques really just define, is it Alzheimer's or not Alzheimer's? Does that make sense to you guys so far? Type in yes if it makes sense to you. Want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Very cool, very cool. All right. And so what are these other types of dementia that are not Alzheimer's? I want to discuss them first before we do a deep dive into Alzheimer's. Okay. What are the other types of dementia that is not Alzheimer's? What do you guys think? Type in the chat. What are some other types of dementia that are non-Alzheimer's dementia? Does anyone know? Yes, Lewy body. Yes, frontal temporal lobe. That's what Bruce Willis has. Yes, vascular. Yes, Parkinson's disease can cause dementia. So yeah, very good, guys. So there are other types. There's Lewy body, there's vascular, there's Parkinson's dementia. There's alcoholism can cause a type of dementia as well. Did you know that you can have memory problems from the lack of vitamin B12? If your vitamin B12 is low, that can certainly cause memory problems, right? Did you know that you can have memory problems from hypothyroidism? If your thyroid is too slow and it's not corrected, that can cause memory problems. Did you know you can have memory problems from medication side effects, right? There are medications that can cause memory issues. And so yes, there are many reasons for dementia, although Alzheimer's take up 2/3 of dementia. All these other reasons I mentioned is the other 1/3 of dementia. Okay. Somebody mentioned here long COVID. Yes. Have you heard of, have you guys heard of post-COVID brain fog? Have you guys heard of that? Yes or no? Post-COVID brain fog. Absolutely. I've seen a lot of patients who have come to see us. They caught COVID during the pandemic, and after that, they had brain fog, and it affected their memory and their cognition as well. So many other reasons. Okay. Somebody wrote here chemo brain fog. Yes, chemotherapy sometimes can induce memory issues and things of that sort. So those are the other reasons for memory issues. Alzheimer's take up 2/3 of memory problems. It takes up the bulk of dementia in general. And in order to have Alzheimer's, you have to have the presence of the plaque and the tangles, which is amyloid and tau. Okay, now, all right, guys. How do we detect plaque and tangles? How do we find it? Not today, but if you were to ask me this question, Dr. Trin, how do I know if I have the plaques and tangles in my brain? If you were to ask me this question, how can I find it? How can I be definitively sure that the plaques and tangles are there? And what are some testing that can be done? Okay, I saw autopsy. All right, well, that's one way to test it. Uh, Not a preferred way. Okay, I see PET scans. You guys are a smart, educated group. So we have a brain scan that's available. It's called a PET scan, not an MRI. An MRI cannot see plaques and tangles, but a PET scan can see plaques and tangles. It's a dedicated PET scan uh, to look for the Alzheimer's plaque, and there's a dedicated PET scan to look for the tau tangles. These are not the same as a routine PET scan that is done to look for, let's say, cancer. Okay, so we know a lot of us have heard of PET scans mainly for cancer evaluation, but these are dedicated PET scans that looks for plaques and tangles. So that exists. That's been FDA approved for over 10 years now. The 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 good versus the bad news of PET scans is this. The good news is that these brain scans are available, FDA approved. The bad news is that not everyone can get it. You can't just walk into the doctor's office and ask your doctor, can I get a PET scan to look for Alzheimer's, right? There are certain criteria that need to be met that are needed to qualify to get a PET scan for Alzheimer's disease that your doctor can discuss with you. The PET scans are also very expensive, and if you cannot, if there's no insurance coverage. Now, there's another procedure that can be done outside of a PET scan and an autopsy to look for the plaques and tangles. This other procedure is called a spinal tap or lumbar puncture. Type in yes or no if you are familiar with the spinal tap or the lumbar puncture. Yes or no? Oh, there's a lot of no's here. Okay. All right. Have you heard of the epidural injection when a mom is delivering a baby? Epidural, you get an epidural to try to decrease the pain from delivery, right? Uh, So an epidural is a lumbar puncture. It's a spinal tap. And what they do is they stick a needle into the spine. And some of you guys have had these epidurals, right? So they stick a needle into the spine. They inject the medication to help with the pain of the childbirth process. Uh, so that's kind of like a spinal tap. But rather than sticking a needle in and injecting medication, In Alzheimer's, to detect Alzheimer's, we stick a needle in and we pull out the fluid that's in your spine. It's called the cerebral spinal fluid. It's the same fluid that's in your brain, actually. And they can look for the plaques and tangles through a spinal tap. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Yes or no? You can look for plaques and tangles through a spinal tap. All right. How many of you guys are interested in a spinal tap to look for plaques and tangles? Any takers? Okay. All right. So that's not very popular, huh? That's not very popular. I see a lot of nopes. I see some yeses with that. And so far I've described 3 ways to find plaques and tangles. Autopsy, not preferred. PET scan of the brain, available but expensive, not easy to get. Spinal tap, available, often covered by insurance, but pretty invasive actually, would be the downside of it. So this fourth way, a blood test, has just been approved by the FDA. Okay, and that was just a few weeks ago in the month of May 2025. If somebody's listening to this, a year later, we now have a blood test. But before I tell you about the blood test, let me ask you a question. Why would you want to find out if plaques and tangles are in your brain? Why would you want to find out? And the first question is actually, do you want to find out, right? Why would you want to find out? I see early detection. I see to prepare, to make plans, to get your affairs in order, prepare for the future, to be proactive. Uh, very good. Now, when you guys say you want to prepare and make plans, give me some specifics. What plans would you make? What plans would you make? I'm curious when you say you want to prepare. Lynn says clinical trials. Okay. Change in lifestyle, caregiving, creating a trust, getting affairs in order, travel plans. Does that mean you want to travel more or less? Help your community know what you want, get the right medications. I love it. Some of you guys are saying, I want to travel more. I love it. Why not travel more now? Prevention of further damage. Yes. So getting your financial affairs in order, right? Getting a trust, doing your advanced directives. Has everyone here heard about advanced directives? Are you familiar with what that is? Right? Good. Maybe you want to get that long-term care insurance, right? Something I should sign up for, and we'll contact our speaker before me, right? So yes, lots of things that can be done. Lots of things that can be done. Maybe you want to look at your, I don't know, maybe you want to look at your will and review it and see whose name you want to cross out or add on, right? And things of that sort. So this plaque and tangle that builds up in our brain, let me ask you a question. By the time somebody gets into trouble with their memory, by the time somebody gets that diagnosis of Alzheimer's, how long has this plaque and tangle, this Alzheimer's plaques and tangle, the amyloid plaque and all that, how long has it been building up, guys? How long has it been building up? 20 years. 20 years of buildup. 20 years of buildup before you get in trouble, right? 20 years of quiet, silent, no symptoms buildup of plaques and tangles. Okay? And here's the thing that you should know. The plaque comes first, the amyloid plaque. It starts to build up first. And as it builds up, a few years later, the tau tangles build up after the plaque. Okay? Plaque builds up first, 20 years. A few years later, tau tangles builds up. A few years after that, before you even get in trouble, a few years after that, in the build-up stage, you start to lose brain cells. The brain cells are going away. Most of these symptoms during the 20 years, there are no symptoms. You feel perfectly fine. Okay. So plaque builds up first, tangle builds up after, the tau tangles. And a few years after that, you start to lose brain cells. Brain cells are going away. Brain cells are dying. How do we know that? We know that because we see the size of the brain on an MRI scan. When we do an MRI, we can see the size of the brain. We call it the brain volume. And in Alzheimer's patients, what happens is the size of the brain starts to shrink. It starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller over time in an Alzheimer's patient. And the reason the brain shrinks is because you're losing brain cells, they're going away. And brain cells that have gone away, they're not coming back. The term we use for that is neural degeneration. Neural degeneration means brain cell death, right? The brain cells are going away. Then you get into trouble with memory loss. The memory problems is really toward the later stages, guys, of this 20-year phase, right? Plaque builds up, tau builds up, brain cells go away, then memory problem starts after that. How many of you guys understand that process now? Type in yes if you understand the timeline of Alzheimer's. Plaque builds up, tau builds up after that, brain cell loss, brain cells are dying, and then memory loss. Make sense? So somebody typed SHIT. Okay. Now, with this knowledge, I also want you to know that we are aware in research, and it's been published, that there are at least 14 modifiable conditions and lifestyle activities that can decrease the risk, that can potentially delay or prevent Alzheimer's by at least 45%. So up to half of Alzheimer's can be prevented or delayed with simply identifying these 14 risk factors and then addressing them. How many of you guys, this is the first time you've heard of this, that Alzheimer's can be delayed or prevented with simply 14 modifiable risk factors? Sort of, yeah, first time, okay. And these are risk factors that are often in our control with lifestyle, what you eat, what you don't eat, how much exercise you get, how much sleep you get, right? How much socialization you do. So with that knowledge that you can do something about this, yes, there's genetics. There is a gene, there's more than one gene, but the ApoE4 gene is the most common one. But genetics does not bind you to the diagnosis. Just because you have the gene, it does not guarantee that you will get Alzheimer's. Does that make sense? Genetics play a small role in Alzheimer's risk. The bulk of Alzheimer's risk is lifestyle. Okay, the bulk of Alzheimer's risk is lifestyle. So what I'm really saying is that Alzheimer's often is in our hands. What we do with our lifestyle, what we eat, how much exercise we get, how much sleep we get, how much socialization we get, right? Most of Alzheimer's is lifestyle related as far as the risk of Alzheimer's as opposed to a gene. And if you know that, and you also understand the timeline of Alzheimer's, where the plaque starts 20 years before, and then the tau tangles, and then neural degeneration, and then memory loss, who wouldn't want to know if they're at risk or not? Right? Who wouldn't want to know if they're at risk or not, especially if you can do something about it? Most of the time, we don't want to know if we are at risk or not because we have a fear of that there's nothing can be done. I don't know what to do if I knew the risk, right? If I took a blood test and I saw that I had the Alzheimer's protein in my blood, why would I want to know if if I didn't feel like there was a cure, if I didn't feel like I could do anything about it, why would I want to know? I mean, that doesn't make sense. I'll just panic and be depressed the rest of my life, right? But if you knew that there was something you can do with your lifestyle, if you knew that there are FDA-approved medications today that are designed to address mild Alzheimer's disease that you may be eligible for, right? Only if you were detected early. The problem is we are not detecting Alzheimer's early today. And I'm going to share with you guys these 14 activities before we're done. Okay, these 14 conditions and all that before we're done. The problem today, guys, is most of us, by the time Alzheimer's is diagnosed, most of us have missed the mild stages of Alzheimer's. Because when your symptoms of Alzheimer's is only mild, right? Forgetting little things here and there. When our symptoms is only mild, what are we blaming on? What are we blaming on? Mild memory symptoms, right? We blame it on getting older. And as we are blaming it on getting older, or we blame it on stress, or we blame it on menopause, or we blame it on the many different things, we blame it on everything except Alzheimer's because we don't want that label to our name. Make sense? As we are blaming mild symptoms of Alzheimer's on getting older, the plaque continues to build up. And as the plaque and the tangle continues to build up, we're losing more brain cells, right? Our brain is shrinking. What we cannot do is we cannot bring dead brain cells back. And this is why I'm here today with you guys, to emphasize the importance of early detection. Early Memory Loss Conference, right? That's the name, the title of this conference, Early Memory Loss. Don't wait till it's no longer early, especially now that there's a blood test coming out, right? Don't wait till it's no longer early. So how are you proactive? How do you take this into your own hands? If your doctor is not doing an annual memory test, ask them to do one. Right? If your doctor isn't doing an annual memory test with you, simply ask them, can you do a memory test? I want to know where I'm at. I want to know if I'm at risk. I want to know how I'm doing in my brain, right? And simply ask them, because most physicians do know how to do one. The part of the problem could be the fact that you have 10 minutes with them, right? Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Part of the problem could be time, right? The memory test is really a cognitive assessment. It doesn't just test your memory. It tests your ability to think. It tests your ability to concentrate and things of that sort. Memory test is just a simple way that I use because you guys all know what that means, right? It's a cognitive assessment. Medicare does cover a cognitive assessment at least once a year. It's part of what I call the annual wellness exam. Have you guys heard of the annual wellness exam? If you're above this age of 65, you should be getting an annual wellness exam done every year. Okay, every year it should be done, an annual wellness exam. And the memory assessment, the cognitive assessment is embedded inside that annual wellness exam. Okay? Because you're not going to be detected for early memory problems if you're not even looking for the problem. And looking for the problem means an annual wellness exam with a memory test embedded in it. Makes sense to you guys so far? You got to be age 65 for this Medicare annual wellness exam. If you're under age 65 and you're having problems with your brain, ask them to do it, right? And let them know with that. It should be done once a year. Now, there are several different tests that are done at the primary care office for your memory assessment, your cognitive assessment. One is called a mini cog, mini and then COG. The other one that's very popular is the mini mental state exam. Whichever one that your provider, your doctor or your NP or PA uses, they will have one to to do that for you. Okay, you don't have to see a neurologist to get that done, especially for early detection. So what are these 14 modifiable risk factors? You guys ready? You guys ready? Does everyone have notes ready? Paper and pencil for 14 modifiable risk factors. Type in yes if you're ready to go. Type in yes. If you need to go get a piece of paper and pencil, go get it. You have like 30 seconds. 30 seconds to get paper and pencil with that. All right. Risk factors. So I will go through with you now. Okay, Dr. Karen says, I already have several pages of notes. I'm glad you're taking notes because it's just coming straight from my brain. I don't have a PowerPoint for you with that. And so these 14 modifiable risk factor came from a publication called the Lancet Commission. They are a group that is commissioned to address and look for risk factors that contribute to Alzheimer's with that. Okay, number one, education is a risk factor. We know that those who have a higher level of education have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who have a lower risk of education. Now, it doesn't mean they're smarter, doesn't mean they have a higher IQ. It meant that they spent more time exercising their brain through education. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? They spent more time exercising their brain. The brain is a muscle, use it or lose it. So when you're studying and learning something, you're using your brain. When when you're just sitting there watching Netflix, you're probably not using your brain as much, right? And so it doesn't mean you have to go back to school. It doesn't mean you have to go back to school. It means you should do something every day to keep your brain challenged. It could be for some people taking a class. For others, it could be learning a new language. For others, maybe it's Sudoku or playing chess, playing checkers, games, word games, things of that sort. Okay, you got to be challenging your brain. If your brain is not challenged and learning something new, that's not exercising your brain. Okay, so education, very important. Don't have to go back to school, but do something every day to keep this brain challenged. Number one. Okay, number two. Socialization. Those who socialize on a regular basis have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who do not socialize and are home alone all day. Those who social. And what does socialization mean? Like right here, we're actually socializing. It's called virtual socializing. It's on Zoom. But socialization means you're spending time with others. You're going out and doing things. You're having meals. You're at the senior center or the community center, and you're in clubs and different things of that sort. That's socialization. Those who socialize on a regular basis have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who don't socialize. That's number two. Okay. Stacy says we're also learning here today. Yes, you are. Okay, number three. Air pollution. It's very interesting. We have reports that shows that those who live in areas of high air pollution have a higher risk of Alzheimer's than those who live in areas of low air pollution. So that's very interesting because air pollution is simply toxins, right? Simply toxin. You're breathing in the toxin. That's what it is. And toxins not good for the brain. Now, if you live in a city with high air pollution and you're like, I can't move, right? I'm stuck here. I can't move. The air is not great. What you can do is maybe consider inside your home an air purifier, air filter, something to keep the air clean inside, right? If you happen to be in an area of high air pollution. Does that make sense to you guys so far? that you can still do something about it, even if you can't walk outside because the air is bad. At least you can try to keep the inside of your place nice and purified and clean with air, with an air filter or something of that sort. Okay, so there's still something you can do about it. That's a modifiable risk factor. Okay, number 4. Mass. Linda says mass. Okay, number 4 is traumatic brain injury. Those who have a history of traumatic brain injury have a higher risk for Alzheimer's than those who don't. And I'm not talking about a one-time event where you hit your head. I'm more concerned with like maybe the football players that are always banging their heads, or the sports where you get hurt all the time, hockey, soccer, boxing, things of that sort. Okay, that's what I mean by traumatic brain injury. Repeated trauma to your brain is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Repeated trauma to your brain. Okay, good. Okay, number 5. Number 5 is an interesting one. Hearing loss. If you have hearing loss and you cannot hear well, it is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. So, why is hearing loss a risk factor for Alzheimer's, guys? Why is hearing loss a risk factor for Alzheimer's? Tell me why. What was that? What was that? Right? Why is hearing loss? So, social isolation, mental isolation, maybe being depressed, those are all reasons. Those are all reasons with that. When you can't hear, you tend to isolate yourself, right? You're no longer socializing as much. But the important thing to remember is that the brain is a muscle, right? The brain's a muscle, use it or lose it. So the way that you stimulate your brain muscle, the way that you stimulate your brain muscle is through the 5 senses. What you hear, what you see, what you taste, what you smell, and what you touch, right? Our 5 senses bring stimulus to our brain, and that stimulates the brain. Make sense so far? So if you cannot hear, you are losing an entire portal of brain stimulation, right? If you cannot hear, you're losing an entire portal of brain stimulation, which means you're not exercising that muscle, your brain, if you can't hear as well. So it increases the risk of Alzheimer's. That increased risk goes away with simply a hearing aid. That increased risk goes away with a hearing aid. So get a hearing aid if you can't hear, right? So most of us sometimes prefer to turn up the volume on our TV rather than wear a hearing aid. But keep in mind that it is a risk factor. Or sometimes we get the hearing aid and it stays in the drawer and it stays there like for months and we don't take it out, right? It's kind of like the CPAP. Many people have CPAP for sleep apnea and it just kind of sits there, right? So hearing loss is a risk factor. Make sure you get a hearing check when you're doing your physical exam. Ask your doctor, can you check my hearing as well, right? And so if hearing loss is a risk factor, so is vision loss. Vision loss is also a risk factor for Alzheimer's for the exact same reason, right? How well you see, how much you see is a stimulus to your brain. So if you have, cataracts, make sure you get it corrected. If you have glaucoma, make sure the eye pressure is low, macular degeneration, all these issues, right? So vision loss, hearing loss, both risk factors for Alzheimer's. Okay, hearing loss is number 5. Okay, number 6 is depression. Number 6 is depression. If you are depressed and that depression is not corrected, not addressed, it is a risk factor for Alzheimer's, guys. Okay? Dr. Karen says, I thought vision loss was number 6. Okay, now let me go through the numbers. Number 1, education. Number 2, isolation, socialization. Okay. Number 3, air pollution. Number 4, traumatic brain injury. Number 5, hearing loss. Oh, number 6 is vision. Well, yeah, number 6 is vision loss, and number 7 here is depression. Okay. Number 6 is vision loss. I threw a vision loss in there real quick, but that's one of the risk factor tied to hearing loss, vision loss. Okay. And number 7 is now depression. You guys all with me so far? Everyone up to date? Type in yes if you're up to date. Everyone's on the same page. No one's got different numbers than I do. Okay, cool. All right. So depression is a risk factor because of this. If you're depressed, do you want to socialize? Yes or no? You don't. You just want to stay home. You don't want to do anything, right? If you're depressed, you tend to not socialize, right? If you're depressed, you don't want to engage with life. If you're depressed, most likely you're not exercising your brain. If you're depressed, you also create stress hormones. Many folks who are depressed, they're depressed because of reasons in life, right? You turn on the news, it's depressing. Isn't the news depressing lately? Or you turn on your iPhone and you're scrolling, and everything you see there on the iPhone news is just doom and gloom. Right? I now call it doom scrolling. Like when I turn on my iPhone and I scroll the news, it's just doom scrolling. I'm just scrolling through doom. So multiple reasons for depression. And what happens is you create these stress hormones that are not helpful for the brain, right? Toxic for the brain. Does anyone know the name of this stress hormone with that? Dr. Trin, you have 5 minutes left before we move to Q&A with that, okay? It's cortisol, absolutely. Now, I got 5 minutes left before Q&A, guys. Let's go through this. Next on the list is high blood pressure. High blood pressure is a risk factor. Okay, high blood pressure is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. If you have high blood pressure, get it under control. Next on the list is diabetes. Did you know that if you're diabetic, your risk of Alzheimer's is twice of that of a non-diabetic? Sugar is toxic to the brain. Makes sense so far? Sugar is toxic to the brain. If you have diabetes, get it under control, guys. With that. Next risk factor is obesity, being overweight. Okay, obesity is, Deb says, do PCPs know all this? Doubtful, but you can ask them. You guys gonna be educating your PCP, okay? With all this information. Obesity is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. Obesity is also a risk factor for like 13 different cancers. So as much as you can, get in a good range with your weight. Obesity is simply a state of inflammation. It promotes inflammation, and inflammation is not good for cancer, not good for the brain, not good for Alzheimer's. Next risk factor is physical activity. Those who exercise on a regular basis have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who do not exercise. Make sense so far? Those who exercise on a regular basis have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who do not exercise. So how much exercise should you do? I recommend at least half an hour a day of doing something. Even if it's a brisk walk, it's good. I measure my steps. You know, I have this little Oura ring here. It tells me how many steps I do, how much sleep I get, and things of that sort. But the more steps you can do, the better it is. So at least half an hour a day of some cardiovascular exercise, guys. Next on the list is smoking. Pretty obvious, smoking is a toxin. And so smokers have a higher risk of Alzheimer's than non-smokers. This ring is called the Oura ring, O-U-R-A ring. I got it at Best Buy. It's kind of pricey though. You don't need to necessarily buy it. Next on the risk factor after smoking is alcohol. So drinking too much alcohol is a toxin to the brain, right? Which is why alcoholics have problems in multiple ways. So smoking, alcohol are both toxins for our brain. Pretty straightforward there. with that. Okay. What number are we at, guys? What number are we at? What do you guys got? What number are we at? 13. So I have one more for you. I have one more for you. The last one is number 14, is high cholesterol. And I'm talking about high LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, okay? I'm not talking about the good cholesterol or the total cholesterol. So here's the thing. How many of you guys know your LDL numbers? How many of you guys know your LDL numbers? LDL. Okay, good. Make sure you know your bad cholesterol numbers. Those with an LDL of 130, right? If you have an LDL of 130, the bad cholesterol, compared to somebody who has an LDL, let's say, of 70. So if I'm comparing somebody with an LDL of 130 to an LDL of 70, the person with an LDL of 130 have a 30% higher risk of Alzheimer's than the person with an LDL of 70. Very important. Very important to get that cholesterol down. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you guys? Excellent. So everything I've talked about here are reasons why early detection is so important, because you can take a lot of this into your own hands, right? With the lifestyle, with everything you know so far, with that, you can take a lot of this into your own hands. And none of this requires an extra prescription. No, some of it may, right? Stress is part of depression. Uh, and there are many things that help with mental health, including meditation and yoga and all that. All right, guys, question and answer time.
All right, thank you, Dr. Trin. We have 5 more minutes, and we just want to make sure that some of the questions in the chat are addressed. So we had someone ask, what does the CT test result mean? Can you explain moderate chronic appearing supratenorial white matter disease? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I'm like, what is that?
Okay, it sounds like somebody is sharing results of a CT scan, which is a brain scan. White matter disease, I don't know if you ever heard of white matter disease that can be seen either on a CT scan or a MRI. It reflects chronic disease. Oftentimes, it reflects poor circulation from either a history of cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure. That's white matter disease, right? The more of those you have, the more white matter disease you have. And so you want less of that, obviously, and you want to control your blood pressure. You want to control your cholesterol and your blood sugar. So that's what it is.
Okay. And then it looks like some of the modifiable factors that people are asking about is like, what about stress? What about diet? What about sleep apnea?
Very important. Yeah, this is more like a 3-hour lecture I normally give. Diet. Okay. The best diet for the brain, guys, is the Mediterranean diet. Okay, write that down. Mediterranean diet. It's basically greens and beans and nuts and berries and fish, olive oil, Mediterranean diet.
And then a lot of people want to know, how do they get the blood test? And does insurance cover it now?
Great question. So when the FDA approves something, you can't go the next day to get it from your doctor. There is a process that goes through with the insurance where they decide, if they approve it, under what circumstance will they approve it? What criteria do you need for them to approve it? So that's going to be several months long, guys. This blood test was just approved a few weeks ago. So I don't expect it to get coverage like, in a few weeks, maybe in a few months. It really depends on insurance. Now, this blood test is for those who are 55 years and older. Okay, you got to be 55 years and older. You have to have memory concerns, right? You got to have symptoms or signs of memory loss. So if you walk in and you're like, hey, doc, I want the blood test, but I don't have any memory problems, I'm not concerned, not covered, right? You got to have memory concerns. You got to be at least 55 years and older. It is not a standalone blood test for the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. It is in conjunction to your memory testing, it's in conjunction to a comprehensive evaluation from your doctor. Okay, it's not a standalone blood test. And what this blood test looks for is that it looks for the proteins, right? The taus and the amyloid, that's what it looks for. It is a pretty accurate blood test. It has a over 90% accuracy rate to rule in and rule out Alzheimer's disease. So if you get a blood test and you don't see it in the blood and it's negative, it's not 100% accurate, but we know it's over 90% accurate that you don't have it in your blood, right? If you get a blood test and we see the Alzheimer's protein in your blood, do not panic. It's not necessarily a diagnosis of Alzheimer's because it needs to be in conjunction with the whole picture, but it does mean you have the protein that's there, okay? It does mean you have the protein that's there with that can lead to definitely Alzheimer's disease. So over 55, memory loss, you got to have memory problems. It is not a standalone diagnosis. It will help rule in or rule out Alzheimer's disease in conjunction with your doctor's evaluation and your memory tests and all that together. Okay.
Okay. And then this is a question we always get asked in our groups as well. What if someone's already been diagnosed with cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's? Do these four modifiable factors still impact them? And what kind of supplements are helpful? We recently heard like B12, vitamin D, and creatine.
Okay. Great question. It is never too late to live a lifestyle to optimize your brain health, no matter what age you are and whether you have a diagnosis or not of Alzheimer's. Obviously, the earlier you start with these lifestyle, the better than somebody who starts the lifestyle now when they have mild memory problems will probably get better results than somebody who's at the severe end state of Alzheimer's, right? And the reason for that is you've lost brain cells already. And once the disease progresses and you have lost these brain cells, they're not coming back. That's the problem. Okay. So the damage is done, but it's not too late to start the lifestyle at any age and at any stage of the disease process. Supplements. So here's the thing with supplements, guys. I believe that your food should be your medicine. Right? I'm not a big pill popper type of guy. Don't recommend that you take 100 pills a day as far as different supplements. Let your food be your medicine. But on the other hand, when should you consider supplements? Supplements, first of all, are supplemental to everything else you do. They're not like the thing, right? Uh, the second thing is if you have a low level of something in your blood, like vitamin B12, you may get some benefit from supplementing that B12 up to a normal level. But if you have normal levels of certain vitamins and minerals, there's no additional benefit to taking more. Does that make sense to you guys? If you have normal levels, there's no strong benefits of taking more. If your levels are low in your blood, then there may be some benefit of supplementing that, till it becomes normal. But my supplementation really is food, right? Eat the right foods to get it in a good range with that.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Trin, for your time today. And there was great questions in the chat. I want to encourage everybody, you can still call our helpline. We have Dr. Trin's information, and he always has great talks all over the community. So we'll make sure that you catch his next talk and connect you with any answers that you still may have. And like I said, we have our memory club and other groups that go into further detail about the modifiable factors and different things that impact memory issues. So thank you so much, Dr. Trin.
Hi,
Until
guys.
next
Yeah.
time.
All right.
Now, everybody, we're going to take a short break. We're going to ask you all to come back around 11:13 or so. So this is a time to stretch if you're sitting down, get some food, get some water. We are also going to go into our second half of the conference. We still have our panel up next. And then we have our final speaker, Dr. Tan, and he's going to go into some of the medications and latest research. I know I saw a couple of questions in the chat regarding that. So I'm sure some of your answers will be explained hopefully in the next session. And now our next panel is truly the heart of this event. We're honored to welcome a group of individuals who are living with early memory loss, some with the support of their care partners, and others living independently. They've all generously agreed to share their stories with us today. Their experiences offer powerful insight into what it means to navigate memory changes with strength, honesty, and hope. I want to thank them for being bold and courageous here today. This is not an easy task, but I hope that you are all get a feel of what we get to experience in our group times. And so I'm going to go through and ask them some questions so you can learn some insights. But let's please give them a warm welcome. And I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves. And I'll ask you by name. But first, everybody, I just want you guys to all take a deep breath. I know many of you are a bit nervous about this time, but I know you're going to do great, just as you always do in our group, sharing a piece of your heart. So first, I'm going to ask everybody just to introduce themselves. If you could please give us your name, what your diagnosis is, and what groups do you currently participate in or have participated in the past? And if you could all put your camera on and unmute at this time. And I'm going to start off with Andrea and Patrick.
My name is Andrea Kramer, and I've been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, and I'm in the group called Grad Club.
Thank you. Next, Reverend Carolyn.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Carolyn Haversham. I usually introduce myself that way because many people think pastors don't have any problems. I was diagnosed with frontal lobe dementia, and I am currently enrolled in Memory Club and Connections.
Great, thank you. And then also Catherine and Rich.
Hi, yeah, I was, my name is Rich Noble. I was diagnosed with MS, and it was about 20 years ago. It started with the MS diagnosis, and then then the new diagnosis now is dementia. I have some. I worked my way through it for 20 years. I was working in retailers so that's it.
Thank you, Rich. And first, I wanted to ask everybody if you could share with us, what were some of your initial symptoms? What were things that maybe yourself or family noticed? And I'm going to start off with Reverend Carolyn.
So my initial symptoms came after a 5-hour surgery. The surgery went 5 hours longer than planned. And after that surgery, I had a lot of brain fog. And from that brain fog, I started losing things like my most important documents, all of my banking, things that I knew where they were. I kept them in the same place. Suddenly they're gone. The other thing I noticed is I started putting things in places I never would have put them. The things that I found, because most things I haven't found ever, but the things that I did find, they were in places that I never would have put them. And yeah, so that's how I noticed. And I was the one who noticed. My family never said anything. I was the one who went to my doctor and said, there's a problem.
Okay, thank you. With that, I want to segue into how did you get a diagnosis? Was it difficult getting one? And can you share about your experience in getting your
Yeah.
diagnosis?
So yes, it was very difficult because I was dismissed many times. I knew that I had a problem. I went to 3 neurologists. The third one said I just needed to go to a psychiatrist because I had psychiatric problems.
Oh my.
So
No.
getting a diagnosis was very difficult. Fortunately, through Alzheimer's LA, I got connected with UCLA and was able to get a study done. And had it not been for that study, no doctor was taking me seriously.
Thank you. Andrea and Patrick, same question. What were some of the initial things you maybe noticed yourself, Andrea, or family? And then if you could share a little bit of your diagnosis journey with us.
Just a lot of forgetfulness.
And I'm
Like,
sorry, can you get a little bit closer maybe
Oh.
to the mic? It's a little bit difficult to hear.
oh, okay. First of all, like just forgetfulness, like repeating myself a lot. And then Patrick noticed that too, that I was forgetting things and repeating myself a lot. And so I went to a neurologist, just a general, well, I talked to my primary care and it sent me to a neurologist. And then that neurologist sent me to another neurologist. So yeah, I'm getting help. I don't know if you want me to talk about the other thing or not yet, or
Well, we could get to that, but like I said, all of this is just sharing experience. So don't worry if there's anything that comes up that you want to share more of. You have the floor.
yeah, the reminders on my phone. Some people would look at them and think that they're ridiculous, but to me, it's a comfort. Just I put everything on there. I put, brush the cats. It's a weekly thing, and I just do it, and then I move it down a week, and then just routine so that I don't have to think about it. I just, when I wake up in the morning, I look at my reminders, and it's like, oh, okay, boom, boom, boom. This is today, or 10 booms, or whatever. So yeah, they sent me to a neurologist. Do you want me to talk about what I'm doing now, or not yet?
Your history.
We'll get there, but
Okay.
well,
Okay.
but thank you, Andrea. And I think everyone can agree, and I'm seeing it in the chat, it is really difficult journey to get a diagnosis, and it can be scary and feeling alone and having those daily reminders. Um, Rich, you mentioned that you first started with the diagnosis of MS and now battling with dementia.
Mhm.
What was your initial response in your diagnosis?
Well, the MS, the interesting thing was when I went to uh, a doctor because I was like unsteady. He said my original diagnosis was my belt was too tight.
Hmm.
So, which was very strange. So we moved on to another doctor, and then I was given go to a neurologist and have a spinal tap, and then they came up with the that was a diagnosis that I had multiple sclerosis. So that was a pretty wild one. Um,
So Rich belongs to MS group, and traditionally people with MS, it's really hard to get a definitive diagnosis. Just like I'm reading the comments here for people.
yeah.
The symptoms can be varied and vague, and without that spinal tap and an MRI to really confirm it, you're in no man's land.
Thank you. And for those of you, once you did get a diagnosis and maybe after that initial shock, how did you tell your family and friends about your diagnosis? Where have you turned to for support, and where did you find support where you weren't expecting? Um, I'm going to start back with Carolyn.
I started with my family. because my dad had Alzheimer's before he passed. And I know the pull on the family when the family is having conversations behind your back, but nobody's talking to each other. So I pulled the family together. It was my New Year's present to them, is to pull everybody together and say, we're starting the year off differently. We're going to talk about the hard stuff. And so that's what I did. I talked about as much as I knew about the disease, and then what I was doing. And so my family and friends, because one of the things that I learned about this disease is that as much as I wanted to keep my independence, it was really important for me to understand interdependence was independence. And so that I understood that we heal in community and not in isolation. So it was important for me to pull my family and friends in and say, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I've learned about it. Here's how you can help me. And having those conversations made it easier for everybody, because then everybody knew what they could do. I didn't want one person being burdened with everything. So I got one person who cooks, one person who does different things, and somebody who checks on me at certain times of day. I mean, everybody has their position of what they do. So if it falls down, I know exactly who to go to. Um, but it just gave everybody a plan and a part in it, and it's now made it a community effort. Everybody's kind of involved in one way or another.
Mm. You know, so many people I hear who are diagnosed say they feel a sense of loss of self, independence, and power. And I just love what you always say. Can you share with everybody how you took back your power?
Well, the first thing I did was said that I am no longer living with dementia. It's going to have to figure out how to live with me. And so, and that meant that I had to learn how to respect the disease and teach it how to respect me. But I had to have a healthy respect for it. And so what I then did was started using the education I was getting and using the different things that I could do to stop or to slow down the progression, and just took my power back. It's the same thing with my driver's license. I knew they were going to come after it. And so rather than them come after it, I gave up driving, because for me, they're coming after it anyway. That's keeping my power, is being able to say, yeah, I gave it up before you came and got it. It's just learning how to be that interdependence is the key, is that I live alone, but I cannot be dependent upon myself. And so my strength is in community.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. And Andrea, what was your plan in telling friends and family? How did you do that? And where do you two look for support?
Well, Memory Club is a very big support. And Grad Club, yeah, very big support. And listening to the others in the group and all that, it's very, very helpful. I When I was first diagnosed, I did not want anyone to know. It was like, oh my gosh, like I don't want anyone to know. But I told one friend, and she told our group of friends. She can't help herself. I love her. She's one of my best friends. She just can't help herself. So a couple others in our friend, group know, but it's not really talked about all that much. I mean,
In the family.
family, I told right away. I told both my kids. I have not told my brother. That's a long story, but yeah, you guys don't want to. It's just, yeah. It's I don't know, just better. I will, but it's better right now if he just doesn't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's another
No,
long story.
no, thank you. That is very hard. You bring up a really good topic that we do go over Memory Club of, how do you share with family? Who feels safe? And like we were talking with Carolyn, that power, how do you keep your power in what you want to share and how you want to share that? And I do see a lot of questions coming up in regards to how to engage, how to partner. Uh, you can all ask those questions to our helpline and care counselors and in group. Right now, we're gonna just give our participants the floor to share, and hopefully you'll be able to get something from that. But we'll wait for specific questions with more one-on-one care. So Catherine and Rich, same question. How did you tell your friends and family about the diagnosis, and how did you look for support and partner with those around you?
Well, I really got a lot of support right away from work and family, and then the MS group that really helped a lot. And now it was more difficult because I was working, and I couldn't go to the group at that point until until later. I retired, and I loved the group, and I attended all the things and talked to all the people, and it really I find it very, very helpful to have other people who are all in the same kind of situation. Fortunately, I'm pretty my body is in pretty good shape. I help set up the chairs and get the group going and every time and do that kind of stuff that the other people can't do, and really enjoy that. But I think it's been great.
So he's been pretty open, and he shared it right away with his loved ones, and you know, his primary care suggested the Alzheimer group, and that's how we came to join Memory Club and now Grad Club, which we are both really getting a lot of support out of. So we're very grateful you're there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rich. I really just want to highlight what you shared is I love that you're able to focus on your abilities and say, I'm still able-bodied and I love to still help and put chairs and whatever. And I think that's really important to highlight to our audience that we really want everybody to feel useful, and there's still so many things within their means of abilities that they can still be a part of activities and events. And don't be afraid to ask, right? Don't be afraid to ask the person with the dementia how they want to participate in anything. So thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. I want to ask you all, how has this diagnosis impacted your life, whether it be work, hobbies, responsibilities, or other relationships? If you can share with us, Carolyn.
Yes, significantly. It has impacted my life. I love to cook. I can no longer cook unless I use an air fryer, and most of you know that's not really cooking, that's warming up. Um, I can no longer drive, so I'm not as independent as I would like to be in being able to go to places I want to go whenever I want to go. Um, and so it's significantly impacted my life in that I now have to depend on people where I'm just used to doing whatever I want to do, however I want to do it. And the good thing is not only that what I discovered is not only that I have people to depend on, but they were glad to be able to have me to be able to do things for me. And so that was something that I picked up that I wasn't expecting. But yes, my life has been impacted. But what I want to say to everybody is it has been impacted in different ways. It has required me to do things in different ways. And yet I'm still living my best life.
I love that. And just because you kind of alluded to it, what are some of the things that you have changed in your lifestyle, routine, financial, legal? What does that look like for you?
So I've done the advance directive. I've done the power of attorney, and I did the power of attorney that my son would be able to make any decisions at any time, do whatever he needed to do that didn't require me. Um, and so I just have I have a higher level of anxiety now, which is new for me. And so I really have to pay attention to what's going on with me and all of those things. But I've been blessed in that even though I knew I had family and even though I knew I had neighbors and all of those things, the blessing now is everybody is joining in to help where they can. And so, yeah, my life has changed because I'm not just me and doing whatever I want whenever I want. It now includes the whole family and everybody. And so those are good changes, but very much significant. And not driving and not cooking are significant changes, but it doesn't end the hope that I have for life.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Andrea and Patrick, I wanted to ask you the same question in regards to what parts of your life have been impacted since diagnosis. But also, I wanted to take this opportunity, you were mentioning it earlier, Andrea, is you are one of the people on the panelist that has been taking the new intravenous drug Kisunla. And I know a lot of people are interested in, what that looks like, what that process looks like, what does that medication feel like? And so I like to take this opportunity to give you that space and share about your experience and let the audience know as well that we are going to go more into that with our final speaker. But how has that impacted you?
The worst, I'll just preface it by the worst part of that is the drive. That's it. Like it just takes a long time to get, we have to go over to the USC. I mean, it's a long drive and it's surface streets and that's the worst part. Once you get there, the infusion, I go once a month and you just sit for an hour, 45 minutes or an hour, and Patrick goes with me and we just sit and talk and play games on our phones or whatever. And it's just an IV. And then when it's done dripping, they take it out and I go once a month. So and I don't have any side effects that I can pinpoint, bad or good.
She does go once a month. Because I think the Lakimba was going to be twice a month.
Yeah.
So we decided just to go to the once a month. But then they said, they threw this little caveat thing, you have to have MRIs once a month also.
Yeah, afterwards.
So it's about a month or 3 weeks afterwards. And they did that. But I think the MRIs are for the first 4 times. And then they'll start back up again.
They're
after
checking
the
for
7th.
if there's any bleeding on the brain. And so far I have had none.
Yeah, so there's no problems with what she's doing. And is it improving? Don't know, but I don't think it's getting any worse.
No, I don't think it's getting worse, but I wouldn't say it's improving.
No, you're not going to see that, but I don't think you should.
I'm the way I'm wired. I just am a nervous person and I worry about, and I get that from my mom and I've always been that way. So I just get nervous about this whole big, picture or whatever. But yeah, I don't have any side effects from that. And I don't believe it's getting worse. I don't, it's not improving, but it's the same. I don't know.
I don't know. My opinion is if it's not getting any worse, it is improving to me.
Yeah.
So it's a step. It's something.
Yeah.
Yes. And you mentioned something, brain bleeds. And for those that take into consideration whether they're going to take this drug, that's a scary thing as soon as you hear that. And as I said, our speaker is going to go in great detail about that. But how did you make an informed decision, or your thought process is when you said, okay, I'm going to try this drug, and maybe share a little bit about what your doctor did to have you be a candidate for the medication?
I mean, I took a test. I went to several neurologists. I went to just a neurologist in my city to start, and then he sent me to somebody else, and then they sent me to somebody else. And, long story short, I ended up going to Elizabeth Joe.
And she's the one that also helped Andrea and myself, mainly her, to decide which medication between the two.
Yeah.
And she's been really great and really happy with, USC and the medication she's on.
Yeah, there's a once a month or a
But
twice a month.
it's like a three of us made the decision.
Yeah.
Andrea having the majority of it, and then the doctor and
Well,
myself.
who wouldn't want to go somewhere once a month as opposed to having to go twice a month?
Right.
I mean, that was a huge, that was a huge thing. But then we were also asking about the effectiveness and,
Yeah, and then also, you had a little bit of a part in it, Cassandra. I mean, you said when we first we were talking about it, she says, you don't know much about it right now because people are going through it as the meetings were going with the clubs and going through it. But then afterwards, you said people are really not having too much, if I may say that, they're not
Mhm.
too much problems at all that you can tell.
yeah, after the first one, I mean, and then they do that first MRI. If there's any bleeding at all on the brain or whatever, they're gonna stop. They're not gonna keep pushing, they're gonna stop. So far, I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
Thank
said, the drive is the part I don't like. That's it.
That can be the case for some, but yes, what Patrick is referring to is they were both in our memory club, and they were asking, my feedback, and I said, honestly, I haven't had too many clients who have tried it because it was just FDA approved. But as we went through the group, I did start to have more clients be on it, and just like they're sharing, there was not any adverse side effects for them. And I want to point out that these treatments are not for everyone. They're only for people in early stage with Alzheimer's that have plaques and tangles. And the Dr. Tan will go over that further. But yes, those are the types of topics that we go over and discuss, and make sure that everyone has an informed decision, whatever it is, whether it's medication or anything related to the disease and diagnosis. So thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine and Rich, I wanted to ask you what kind of aspects of your life have been impacted, and how have you made changes since your diagnosis, whether it be lifestyle, routine, or anything related to that?
Not a lot of changes so
Yeah,
far.
right.
So we'd already done our estate planning and all that. We have to go back and look at it again because I put Rich in charge of my medical decisions, and now I'm like, oh, maybe I'll have to make some changes there. But we both retired, and there's a little component of lack of socialization because he was in a job where he was talking to people all day, every day. And
Yeah.
so we are trying to find ways to reconnect and volunteer and get out there some more, because I know it's a contributing factor here.
Mhm. Thank you. And what are the types of things that help you cope with these new changes in your life?
Well, I do things like try to keep my body really healthy. I have this crazy thing now where I like to do 10,000 steps a day. Fortunately, we live in a great place for it because they have a hiking trail with a couple blocks from our house. So
I call it his healthy addiction.
yeah, so I got to do it, and it's crazy, but it really makes when I feel better physically and stronger physically, I think it helps me feel better mentally. So I really enjoyed that. And then I'm also now, Catherine's always bugging me. I'm into puzzles and things like puzzles and books. And I've always been a reader. That's something I like to do. But puzzles are a thing. I have a puzzle table, and I always work on it. I work on that kind of stuff. So
I love that you mentioned some of those modifiable factors that we were talking about, and people were asking, are they helpful once you have a diagnosis? And I'd like to say yes, I think it really does. And you're a testimony to that in sharing, how impactful moving your body is, being engaged, having those connections, like you said earlier, with still being a part of events and things like that. And I hear that all the time from so many people. So yes, all of these things are great. They're never something that, wouldn't be helpful even with the diagnosis. So keep up the good work. Carolyn, what are some of the things that you have done to cope with the new changes in your life?
The a lot of the things I've done are things that I've learned from the groups, the memory group and connections and grad club. I exercise, and I wasn't doing that before. I was exercising in my mind. I actually walk now. I do yoga, meditation. I stick close to the Mediterranean diet, walking and brain games. All the things that I've learned in groups or from reading or those things that I can do, I have tried to incorporate all of those into my life. They say that they slow down the progression. I'm going to believe them. And so I'm trying to put as many of those things that they tell us into my life and into my daily operations.
Great. Something that you always say in group that I love to hear, if you don't mind sharing, is the idea of your brain like a computer and how you treat it like a computer sometimes when it may have too much information being downloaded.
Um, so I do what is called brain dumps. A friend of mine taught me that. I go to the comedy channel and I put on comedy, especially on hard days, and I just laugh. And I have found that to be such a stress reducer. And it's been the thing that helps me cope because one of the things that I have learned is that while this disease is hard, there are many places where you can laugh at yourself. I laugh at myself a lot. I look at some of the things I do and I just say, what would have made you do that? And rather than get all tense and up in arms about it, it's done, it's happened. I've learned to laugh at a lot of things.
Great. Thank you. Um, Andrea and Patrick, what are some of the ways that you have found to cope outside of medication and other traditional ways of coping or handling the disease?
I have an awesome husband. He's the best. He's just calm, and I lean on him for a lot of stuff, but he's that's what I wrote down. Um, just putting the reminders on my phone, you know, and
I think myself is being more patient.
oh, he's
Yeah,
Saint Patrick is you got the patience of a saint. He
they
does.
named a holiday after me.
He really does. He's very patient person.
But being patient, I think, is number one because
Because he has to repeat himself sometimes.
you got to repeat yourself because I can't hear the damn TV sometimes.
I mean, and I know I repeat myself, but he's very patient. He never throws in my face, I mean, if I've asked it like 5 times, he might say, "You've already asked me that." But yeah, he's just patient. And
It's gotta be patient.
you need that.
And prayers, lots of prayers.
Yes.
And
It
belief.
couldn't hurt.
So.
Thank you. I'm very fortunate that I get to see many couples like yourself, but I really love the love and respect that Andrea and Patrick have for each other. And I have been able to facilitate groups where they are on their own, individually. And I love to always hear Andrea talk so fondly about Patrick. and always say how she doesn't feel like she's doing enough, and then Patrick on the other end being like, I feel like I'm never doing enough, and just how much your teamwork and love shines. And there are so many partners in the group that continue to show up for each other, and although they uh you know have their hard days, I always say you guys always show up. That's the most important thing. You're not always going to have all the answers and bring your best selves, but you show up continually for yourself and each other. So thank
He's
you.
my best friend.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's a teamwork, so.
We
And
met when I was in high school.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
We did.
And she's 29.
I met him, I was 16 when I met him. We started dating when I was 18. And I just knew, and my mom knew.
Okay.
I love it. So yes, we tend to get off course of our questions, but that's just to show you the good time that we like to have in group and share and just do life with each other. And sometimes this disease can be so heavy, and being ourselves and our whole selves. So thank you for that, for
We have
sharing
to laugh.
intimate
have to laugh.
parts.
At some things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with that, I want to say to Rich and Catherine, I know, Rich, this was really important for you to share, is what are some of the positives that you have found in knowing your diagnosis, and any positive impacts in receiving an early diagnosis? What would you like to share with everybody?
That's a good question. Well, I think the thing that that the big thing that really helped me is talking to other people in similar situations, or that like that group thing is just I just love that. I like that idea of going to I kind of can't wait for the group meetings that I go to, because I mean everybody has to deal with all kinds of different versions of what I go through, and I really think that that's the big thing is having that, knowing that I'll get a chance to talk it out, and with people in similar situations who, we are like, when people are talking, everybody's like nodding their head, like, oh yeah,
I can relate to that.
me.
Yeah.
That's me. That's what I was thinking. So I think that the group thing was kind of changing for me because I was working before, and I didn't really have time to go to the groups stuff, but I really look forward to it now. I think that's a big thing for me.
And the organization that offers caregiver support, it's been hugely helpful, and so many tips that we learned just from joining initially Memory Club, and how to keep the home safe. And there's a whole world of information on your website. So that's been very positive.
Great. Thank you. So I'm hearing you say that an early diagnosis makes way for early connections, not feeling alone as a person with memory issues and the caregiver, right? Because you guys are the experts, and just being in a group and hearing in real moments of time what's working, what's not working, what resources are available, is very impactful to a lot of families. And it sounds like it's been impactful for you too as well.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Great.
Carolyn, same question. What are some positives that you have found in knowing your diagnosis? Any positive impacts in receiving an early diagnosis?
Oh yeah, early diagnosis for me is power. The early diagnosis allowed for me to get a lot of information, change my lifestyle, help my family to understand. It was the connecting piece. The early diagnosis and the groups. having the information from the groups, hearing what everyone else is saying, what they're going through, how they're managing, but knowing my diagnosis, having the study done, getting the early diagnosis, it is the reason that I can live my best life now, because it is having the information is the power. And the having early diagnosis means that it has not gone into the other avenues of more advanced dementia. It will get there. It may get there, whatever, but it's not there now. And early diagnosis at least gives me the tools to know how to slow down the progression and to have the positive, grab hold of the positives to continue living my best life, understanding that yes, I do have a disease and I need to respect it, but also learning how to live and move in life. But without early diagnosis, I couldn't. It would not be what it is for me right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. And Andrea and Patrick, same question. What are some positives that you notice in getting a diagnosis?
I know this one. Let me start. Her driving has improved. The
Oh.
reason why is because she had to take they yanked her. They were going to yank her license.
My doctor, I guess she's required by law, when they give you the diagnosis, they have to report it to the DMV. That's what I was told. So I get this letter from the DMV, and boy, was I mad. I was like, what the heck? Why would she do? She was required to. So yeah, we went around, we practiced, like I was in driving school again, just to make sure, because he's very patient, and he's a good, critic. Then I parallel parked and blew him away. But yeah, but I know that could happen again. They might, who knows, they might do this once a year. But I won't freak out. I'll just do my best.
But she doesn't speed. She doesn't tailgate.
And I used to.
Yeah.
Like, my driving's better.
The brakes on my side of the car never worked.
Yeah.
Just never worked.
And now he never has to use them.
Nope.
That's what he tells me.
But
It's the
really,
written part
I'm
that I
very
worry.
proud of her for that also.
I studied and studied for it was the written part that would made me so nervous. And I get in there, and of course, like the first two questions, I thought those were not in the book. Those were not in the book. I'm positive. So I just answered them the best I could, and I think I got one of them wrong. They were just dumb as they didn't have anything to do with driving. Like, anyway. So yeah.
Driving.
Huh?
Driving.
Not really.
Yeah.
They were off, and it kind of, and the first two questions, it kind of threw me right at the beginning, and then I just thought, you can do this. I have to tell myself all the time, you can do this, and sometimes I can, and sometimes I don't do so good, but I just try to tell myself positive things. It can't hurt.
Thank you. I love that, Andrea. And thank you for bringing that up. That is one of the most difficult topics that we discuss. Is it is required by law for your provider to report to the DMV if you've been diagnosed with dementia. And you also do have an opportunity to take a test that would be have restrictions on it. So that's what Andrea is sharing, is that she was able to do so. And so we just have time for one more question. So I want to ask everybody, if you have any advice for professionals working with people impacted by early memory loss, what would you tell them? Or you can just share anything that you think is important for the audience to know. So I'm going to start with Carolyn first.
To the professionals, I would say, please see patients as human beings coming to you for your help. If you are not a people person, please do something else. As a patient,
Agreed.
I've had more than enough experiences with poor bedside manner, and we deserve better. And you have a responsibility to treat us as human beings. And I'm just asking all the professionals to see us as human beings first.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Carolyn. Same question to Catherine and Rich.
Well, one of his neurologists when we first started noticing the memory problem, says, yeah, that's what happens when you have MS. Period. And we were like, okay, second opinion. And so his last neurologist was super helpful, gave us the guidelines, 30 minutes of exercise, different kinds of puzzles. And Rich walked out of there feeling like, wow, finally somebody's giving it to me straight and step-by-step instructions how to help. So very different experiences depending on the doctor, but you got to keep pushing till you get one you click with.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Thank you. And Andrea and Patrick.
I would say exactly what has been said. Like, because I started with, one neurologist and was okay, but it was out of his realm or something. I don't know. So he sent me on, and I saw somebody that wasn't helpful at all, but so I'm glad that you just keep pursuing it. You have to have a good relationship with that person. You have to be able, a good fit is you have to be able to talk and be open and say what you need. And then you also have to listen, which I have to work on all the time.
And be patient.
Yes.
Like we've been saying, Andrew and I've been saying, be patient. It took her 6 months to go see the neurologist,
My
Okay.
current one.
the current one, the USC one. And then she talked, and then our next appointment was another 6 months. And you just got to be patient and, and be open. And then after that, we got things on the ball, starting like in January of last year. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And she told us about Alzheimer's LA also.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for being here, each and every one of you, for being so vulnerable. And you all did it. You guys did it.
Yeah.
It's done. I know you've provided a lot of insight for many watching. And so again, thank you so much for your time and willingness to open your heart today to others. I just wanted to make a final comment and what I'm seeing a lot in the chat. We have a lot of people here today, like Dr. Trin and Dr. Tan, that give their time and information, and I hope you learn from them. But we also recognize that, unfortunately, sometimes that's not always the standard of care. But we're going to work together and hope that through this conference and through them sharing their experience, that you're going to get the answers needed, right? You're going to get the care, and we're going to work in this in community. As Carolyn said, it takes all of us to work together. So you're not alone in this journey. But thank you all again for showing up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Now for the next portion of our conference, we're going to do something a little bit different that we haven't done before. And we're actually going to have we are actually going to take a moment to highlight a vital piece in the puzzle that you might have been hearing about, and that's clinical trials. So we have Monica Moore from UCLA, a community health program manager at the Easton Center, and we'd like to have her come on and just share a little bit about clinical trials and how getting involved looks like. So Monica?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Cassandra, and all of Alzheimer's Los Angeles for having me here today. So just briefly, in this sort of few minutes interstitial here, want to share just some information regarding clinical trials and how you can participate. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we really tried to focus on and is so important in this world of research is participation. Historically, the majority of medical knowledge has been based upon white males. Women and minorities are vastly underrepresented in Alzheimer's research, as well as just other research as well. So, one thing especially that is so important is that 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's disease are women. but women aren't as represented in clinical trials. So right there, we're seeing, these disparities that we need more women to participate so that the new medications, the new treatments, the new research that we find out is truly can impact women as well. We're looking at African Americans are only 2.4% of the clinical trial participants for Alzheimer's disease, and Hispanics are only 2%. So right away, we're seeing these big differences in these numbers. These should be much higher if we want to properly represent the people who are impacted and most affected by this disease. This really does get down to the point of understanding the differences in gender, race, ethnicity, so that we can have safe and effective use of therapies. I know just earlier the panelists were talking about the infusion medications. Those weren't tested on wide variety of proper representation of people, so they're not going to work the same, and this is information that we really desperately need. And so we turn to all of you just to explain the importance of this today. Next slide, please. So why do this? First of all, yes, you can learn more about your condition, your disease. You can learn more. You can feel like you're an actual active participant. I think lots with this disease is people are told, well, here you go, here's your medication, and we'll see you in 6 months, as was just referenced. But by being a part of a clinical trial, you actually have the opportunity to be more of that active participant in your health and in your health care. It's also, again, you're helping researchers learn. We talk a lot about like rats and doing research on rats, but rats are very different than humans. We need humans. We need people to really participate in these studies. And whether it's going to impact you or not, it can impact the next generation. My grandmother had Alzheimer's disease, and I come at this field realizing that whatever comes about may be good for my parents, may be good for me, may not. But what I want is to make sure my children don't have to face this. And this is really where we see clinical trials and studies to be so important, is to be able to especially help with this next generation. Next slide, please. So what is clinical research? There's two different types. There's observational research, where researchers will gather information from people and compare changes over time. This is also how we learn about the progression of the disease. This is how we learn so much about the disease and also just basic medical interventions. We have to learn, and by learning, by observing, we learn. Interventional treatments is where we're testing the same medications, new imaging techniques, medical, surgical, or other behavioral interventions that exist as well. And it's primarily the way that we learn if a treatment is effective or not. And I know Dr. Tan, who will be coming up after me, will talk a lot more about this as well. Next slide, please. So many types of research studies. It's not just always a drug. It's not just someone being a lab rat, right? We want people to, we can interview people, telephone studies, in-person interviews, cognitive testing, also biomarker studies, blood tests, MRIs, PET scans, lumbar punctures. Let's try to learn more. And then, of course, there is the clinical trials piece as well. Next slide. So as I sort of mentioned earlier, we're looking at some of the benefits of participation. So you have that active role in your healthcare. You really get some of the top-notch experts, medical care from lots of academic institutions and private institutions. And one thing that we also want you to know, there are so many different trials out there, but always be mindful. They should be free to you. You are giving your time, you are giving your blood, you are giving your thoughts and your opinions. You should not be giving them your money. So keep that in mind as well if you are exploring the world of research. Next slide, please. So now I'm just going to show you how you can really find out about clinical trials. So this is the government website called clinicaltrials.gov. It's a little clunky. It's a government website, so it's not super user-friendly, but it's still a pretty good website. Next slide. So what we do right here, next slide. So we have the little piece here where you want to type in, what is your condition? The condition is dementia. Next. We type in, let's say, other terms, Alzheimer's disease. Next. Type in here, where do you want to be? Of course, you want to come to UCLA or wherever you are, whatever is close to you. So you type in that information. Next. And then you click the search button. Next. And so now here we are, we come up with a result. There's lots of different results that came up. This was 51 different results that came up for a research study. This is studying the effects of a medication for the treatment of agitation of dementia and Alzheimer's type dementia. And also underneath, you're going to see the locations. Where is it? It's at UCLA. It's also in Anaheim, Fullerton, Encino. So you can really see what works for you. Next slide. Go through a little bit of a study interview, allows you to see what is the study, what's the focus of it, how does it work out. Next slide. Some participation criteria, if you are eligible or not. Ages for this one is 50 to 90. So we can, again, figure out what works best for you. Next slide. And then, again, look at the locations. One of the biggest things, no matter where you go, no matter what research you do, or however you participate, make sure it's convenient for you. Like, don't drive. There's enough stress in your life regarding Alzheimer's disease, caregiving, etc., that we really want to make sure that you find something that is close so that it is successful. That is always our goal. Next slide. The next. Sort of zooming through here. I know I am tight on time. Next, please. So really quickly, just going to touch on a few different types of studies, and I show this to you so you can understand the types of studies that exist. Next slide. Different interview studies. 2 different studies that we have at UCLA were one basic research dementia focus group. Why do you participate? Why do you not? Conversations. Another one is learning about health conditions that affect memory as one ages. Next slide. Then there's these longitudinal studies. So the first ones were just sort of one-offs, like meet once, let's get some information. This next one, let's have more of a conversation over time. ADNI is a nationwide study that's been going around since 2004. It has been an amazing study that has really given researchers a lot of that vital information about Alzheimer's disease and treatment and diagnosis. Also looking at different biomarkers, studying, again, people over time. And then we have a family-based study as well. Next slide. Then there's some fun studies. We say, there's medications, but we have the interviews, but then there's a new study that's coming out right now that we have at UCLA that's studying music. What is the impact of music, especially at 40 hertz enhanced music? And how does that impact your cognitive functioning? And this is for people who are either normal or with Alzheimer's or MCI or dementia with Lewy body. Next. And then other areas of research. There's so many. This could be a conference just in and of itself is realizing what it exists. But looking at other areas, low intensity focused ultrasound, polyphenols and cognitive decline. There's a study specifically for people with traumatic brain injury. And also we want to look at the effectiveness and the safety of tau PET scans. The PET scans that exist now are amyloid. And now we want to see how can we bring tau PET in for better diagnosis. And then there's always more to be added. And I think that is going to be it on my time. So I appreciate everyone. I appreciate you being here, giving your time for Alzheimer's Los Angeles and learning more. If anyone has questions, I'll put my information in the chat as well. So feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. All right, Cassandra, I know I'm a few minutes over, but it's all you.
You're good. Thank you so much, Monica. And Monica is also someone that comes to our memory club quite frequently. So if you are interested in learning about clinical trials, please sign up. You'll get a whole hour with her. And now, as we close out our conference of our esteemed experts, we move to Dr. Zaldi Tan, a nationally recognized leader in Alzheimer's research and care. He serves as the director of the Memory and Aging Program at Cedars-Sinai Health System and brings a unique combination of clinical excellence and public health perspectives to memory care. Dr. Tan's work has shaped how we understand and treat cognitive decline across diverse populations. It's a privilege to welcome Dr. Tan.
Thank you, Cassandra. Just mic check, make sure that I'm okay. If you don't hear me, please let me know. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's such an honor to be invited to this important conference, the Early Memory Loss Conference. And I commend all of you for being here on a Saturday morning, afternoon, to invest in knowing more about the brain and how we could move forward in our quest together to make sure that Alzheimer's disease become a thing of the past, or at least something that we can control and live with and not affect our future. So I'm Zaldi Tan, as Cassandra said. I'm a director of the Memory and Health Aging Program over at Cedars-Sinai, we do memory evaluation, risk reduction for patients with family history or genetic risk for Alzheimer's disease. We also do clinical trials like Monica and her group at UCLA. So glad to be part of this community. Okay, next, my goal today is to talk about clinical research, past and present. So I apologize for those who are very well read and are very knowledgeable about how Alzheimer's disease developed. But for those of you who may benefit from a little review, this is just a brief review of how do we know from our current thinking, does one develop Alzheimer's disease in the first place? Well, the current thinking is that the process starts about 10 or 20 years before the start of any memory issue. Before you forget your cell phone, before you get lost driving, before you start repeating your conversations and your questions, these things start to happen. On the left side of the screen of this, I'm sorry, this cartoon, you can see sort of the normal metabolism of something called amyloid precursor protein, or APP. So this is a transmembrane protein, meaning it lives within the cell membrane of our cells, and it is normally cleaved by two enzymes. These are the alpha and the gamma secretase to the left side, and it generates something called alpha APP, which is soluble. It doesn't do anything. It's part of our normal human metabolism. The problem with Alzheimer's disease starts when there is um, there is a faulty cleavage of the amyloid precursor protein, as you see on the right side of this, wherein it is cleaved instead of the alpha secretase by beta secretase and then by gamma secretase. And it generates this beta APP that you see here, the purple one, the circle purple, protein that you see in the cartoon, and that's just the one that accumulates and forms into the sticky and insoluble amyloid plaques, we call it. And around these proteins develop things that are not good, things like oxidation, excitotoxicity, inflammation, all of the bad things that happen. And the current thinking is that this end result is that brain cells start to shrivel and die because of these processes that are generated by the beta amyloid precursor protein. Okay, so that's just a brief review of the pathophysiology. We could go to the next slide. And this is very important as we talk about treatments later on. Okay, next. So as the amyloid precursor protein gets cleaved and becomes amyloid beta, these are what's formed. So this is a picture of what the brain will look like when if you take a section of the brain, look at it in the microscope. Here in the picture that's labeled senile plaque with microglial activation, this is the amyloid plaque, or that when you look inside, that is made up of the beta amyloid that I just described to you. And when the beta amyloids appear, what follows is something called hyperphosphorylation of certain microtubules within the cells, generating tau, which is the other abnormal protein that is associated with Alzheimer's disease. So you can see on the right picture the neurofibrillary tangles, we call it. That's why Alzheimer's disease is called a disease of plaques and tangles. And together, these causes cell death, uh, challenges with neurotransmitter, which are the chemicals that brain cells or nerve cells use to communicate with each other. And what we see in the day-to-day life is the forgetfulness and the confusion, the problems with thinking, not remembering things, not recognizing things. So that's sort of a simplistic way of describing a very complex process that goes on in the brain of someone who is starting to develop Alzheimer's disease. Okay, next. So I mentioned the amyloid plaque. It starts here on the upper part of this cartoon. It starts in something called the entorhinal cortex, which is around close to where our ear, behind our ear, and in that area is the short-term memory center called the hippocampus. So the reason we don't know why, but these amyloid plaques start to develop within that specific area in Alzheimer's disease. So since that area is responsible for short-term memory, what happens is that the person starts becoming forgetful, repeating questions, conversations, misplacing things, getting lost while driving, forgetting appointments, etc. So these things are do appear in early in the course of the disease. And as you can see in the picture, it starts spreading, from stage A when it's just in the entorhinal cortex, spreads to the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe. And guess what? Each of these parts of the brain serve different functions, things like vision, things like planning, organizing, sequencing, inhibition control. So that's why in the moderate to late stages of Alzheimer's disease, you can see sort of the other symptoms besides memory, things like losing directions or not recognizing that they are in the home that they have lived in for the past 2 decades or 3 decades, not recognizing relatives because it affects the other parts of the brain that serves these functions. The neurofibrillary tangle, the other abnormal protein, also develops and spreads just like the amyloid plaques. And this is what happens in the course of this disease. Okay, next. So that's just Alzheimer's 101. And again, sorry for those of you who are already very knowledgeable about this, but this is important for the rest of our discussion. Because the next part I'm going to be talking about in terms of research is research into early diagnosis. Okay, next. The biggest thing that happened in the past few years with regards to diagnosis is biomarkers. Next slide. Um, for the longest time, when I was in training and even before, the only way to diagnose dementia or Alzheimer's disease was through interview and cognitive testing. That's why the psychiatrists were the ones to first recognize Alzheimer's disease because it presents in a way that affects the person's day-to-day life and their behavior. So this is the DSM-5 criteria for for dementia, also called major neurocognitive disorder by psychiatrists. And it shows you sort of the things that physicians look for when they make a diagnosis of dementia. So things like problems with learning and memory, language, executive function, which is the ability to plan and sequence events. I give an example of baking a cake, for example, right? Or cooking. You need to have an order and a plan, a sequence of when you put ingredients, when you turn up the heat, when you put the garnish, etc. So that's an example of executive function. Complex attention, perceptual motor, social cognition. So again, a lot of people think of dementia as a problem with memory when memory is only just one part of this. It's the first one, learning and memory. But there are a lot of other things that can be affected in dementia. And for those of you who are taking care of someone with dementia, you already know this. So this changes has to be significant enough to interfere with one's performance of everyday activities. So things like going to the drugstore to pick up your medicines or refilling your medication, things like doing your taxes, things like taking care of your grandkids or running a board meeting for those people who are still working. So this has to be significant enough to interfere with the performance, independent performance of one's daily functions. The person must not be delirious, and they also should not have other conditions that could better explain the changes more other than dementia, things like schizophrenia or severe depression. So for the longest time, this is the way we diagnose dementia. And for those of you who are thinking, how accurate is this, right? Because there's a lot of things that can mimic Alzheimer's disease, like depression, for example. Well, I can tell you from studies that the accuracy of the diagnosis by a trained and competent professional is about 70 to 80%. So about 20% of the time, some doctors may miss it. Obviously, people who are more specialized in memory evaluations will have a higher accuracy than those who don't do this on a daily basis. Okay, next. But now we have entered the stage of biomarkers. So I'm going to talk to you about biomarkers and how it has really revolutionized the way that we are diagnosing Alzheimer's disease. Okay, next. So biomarkers, what is a biomarker anyhow? The biomarker is broadly defined as a substance in an organism like a human being, but it could be an animal or some other living organism, a substance whose presence is indicative of some disease, infection, or environmental exposure. It's very broad, right? So for example, an example of biomarker that's not in the Alzheimer's disease world is if I get chest pain, and I'm taken to the emergency room, the emergency room doctor will be asking me like, "Oh, when did the chest pain start? Where does it hurt? Do you have high cholesterol? Do you have high blood pressure? Do you have risk factors?" And the emergency room doctor may take my electrocardiogram to see if I have the changes that are telltale of a heart attack. But then he or she will draw my blood immediately, send it to a lab, and look for something called high sensitivity troponin, because troponin is a very sensitive biomarker for for damage to the muscle of the heart. So if that's elevated and it's very sensitive, they see that in my blood, they'd be like, "Guess what? You're having a heart attack. Dr. Tan, we need to admit you to the hospital," right? And if it's negative, it's so reliable that they may say, "Are you anxious? Are you worried about something? Is it in your head?" Kind of thing. And if the electrocardiogram and other signs are not typical, they may be like, "You should go home and rest instead of going to the hospital." So that's a example of biomarker. So for the longest time, we did not have biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease. We relied on interviews, and we still do, because that's still the basic framework of diagnosing Alzheimer's disease. Okay, next. But now we have tools under our belt for those of us who do this for a living to diagnose things more accurately. So one tool is an X-ray of the brain, neuroimaging. So a brain MRI, CAT scan of the brain, or some of the fancier tests like a FDG PET, which is a functional scan, and the biologic scans that are listed here. I'll talk to you and show you some pictures about in each of these. Okay, next. So brain MRI, typical brain MRI will show us, and the radiologist, the differences between a normal aging brain compared to someone who has mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease. Again, this is a classical picture. Not all MRIs are this clear, but on a good day, and if it's a very clear MRI, we can see these changes. So you can see normal aging. The arrow shows the hippocampus. This is the short-term memory center that I told you about. B is mild cognitive impairment. This is the stage before Alzheimer's disease develops. You can see that the hippocampus has shrunk a bit, but still there. It's still pretty plump. And when you get to Alzheimer's disease, you can see that the hippocampus has shrunk even more. So this is one of the things that we look for when we look at the brain MRI as a biomarker that there might be Alzheimer's disease forming in this person who's having memory issues. Okay, next. We also look for other things like atrophy or decrease in size of other parts of the brain. Like here, the frontotemporal dementia presents differently from Alzheimer's disease. It affects mostly the frontal part of the brain, which is right here near the forehead. And that causes different symptoms early. It can cause disinhibition. People are hugging strangers, kissing babies on the street that's not related to them, saying offensive or sexist or racist things. That's a very different type of dementia. Semantic dementia, where the problem is more expression. This is the aphasias that you might have heard about, that some popular actors may be getting, right? wherein they have a problem expressing themselves or understanding their spoken or written speech, and then other forms of aphasia. Okay, just to show you that this is in fact a biomarker of what kind of dementia exists or is there, if any. Okay, next. All right. It also shows we can also see from an MRI changes in the vascular system. The brain is very, very oxygen rich and oxygen hungry. So it's a highly metabolic organ, even though it's not like very showy like a muscle, like you run, you feel like, oh my God, my muscles are getting bigger. But the brain is very quiet, but it's very, very highly metabolic because we're thinking, we're scanning our environment. And this is an example of someone who has cerebrovascular disease, meaning over the years, they've developed some blockages in the capillaries that feed the blood vessels that feed the brain. And therefore, this may manifest also as dementia or forgetfulness, which is different from Alzheimer's disease, which is, again, the plaques and tangles. Okay, next. Yeah, this is just showing you areas of stroke and other lesions. Okay, next. And this is the white matter hyperintensities that show here. My colleague Sarah Kremen has so kindly indicated to us some of the pathologic lesions that happen in this disease. Okay, next. Okay, there's another type of MRI called the FDG PET or fluorodeoxyglucose PET scan. And this is different because, as you can see, the picture is fuzzy because what it looks at is not the structure, but it looks at function. What they ask the patients here is to not take too much carbs or sugars for a few days before the test, and then the brain becomes hungry for glucose because glucose is the primary energy source of the brain, and then they inject these tagged glucose, this so-called fluorodeoxyglucose, that lights up when they do the PET scan. And this is what it looks like, right? Normally, the brain should be normally, dark. But here you can see that there are shades of gray, right? So in Alzheimer's disease, what the pattern that we look at that's consistent with it is called frontotemporal hypometabolism, sorry, temporoparietal hypometabolism. And this is what this one shows. You just got to trust me on this. That's what it shows. Okay, next. All right. The other type of scan is a biologic scan. So you probably heard of this. This is an amyloid PET. So this one is different because it is done through also a PET scan like the FDG PET, but this one actually looks at the presence of amyloid in the brain. You remember that first picture I showed you with the amyloid? This is what it's detecting. And as you can see, normal aging, no amyloid, mild cognitive impairment, those yellow orange areas are amyloid. They're there, but not as much. And C, this is full Alzheimer's disease. You can see it's lit up, right? Their brains are lit up with amyloid. So that is what we say when someone is amyloid positive. Okay, next. There's also tau PET. As I mentioned, tau is the cause of tangles. It's another abnormal protein, and it can also be seen in the brain, although it's not really clinically used that much, but it's more for research. Okay, next. And this is what it looks like when it's done. Okay, next. All right. So this is an important picture because I want you all of us to understand that memory loss, which you see here in the purple, is very much late in the Alzheimer's disease process. So amyloid develops 10 to 20 years before the first signs of memory forgetfulness. Can you go back, please? And then tau develops, and brain atrophy develops, like the one I showed you, and then finally memory loss happens, and then subsequently the functional decline. So there's a lot of early things that happen even before the start of the memory loss. So that's an important concept when we talk about the next phase. Okay, next. So this is the ATN or amyloid tau neurodegeneration classification. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just know that the diagnosis of Alzheimer's has gone from clinical, asking questions, all that stuff, which is still very important and it's still done, but now complemented by these looking at the pathology. Okay, next. Okay, now let's talk about biomarkers other than the one on the left was the one I talked to you about, the amyloid PET scan, the imaging, but we also have CSF and blood-based biomarkers that look at the biomarkers from fluid standpoint. So what happens in the CSF is that the amyloid beta 42/40 ratio goes down, while other biomarkers like p-tau 181, 217, NFL goes up. The blood-based biomarkers reflect that as well. Okay, next. So these things are important because now we have ways to confirm our diagnosis through either a spinal tap or a PET scan or a blood-based biomarker, as I mentioned. Okay, next. So just note that blood-based biomarkers are all the rage, and very much in the news because it's new, right? There's a lot of blood tests that are commercially available. In fact, some of them are advertising to the consumer or direct to consumer or to the public. I would not recommend anyone do this on their own without the guidance of a health professional because the interpretation of this is nuanced and it does not serve anyone's purpose to just check it on their own without the guidance or the interpretation of a health practitioner because it's not as clear and simple as you may think. Okay, next. Um, there is in the news, if you Google this blood-based biomarkers, you will find that the latest news in the past week or two is that the FDA has approved a specific blood biomarker test called Lumipulse. Lumipulse is a type of blood-based biomarker that has gone through the FDA process to show that their results are reliable, it's reproducible, et cetera, et cetera. And what it is it checks the tau, p-tau 217, and the beta amyloid 4:2 plasma ratio. And when it's up, it tells us that there likely is accumulation of that protein in the brain. But mind you, that not everyone who has elevated blood biomarker will develop dementia, and definitely not everyone who has this has Alzheimer's disease, right? Because I told you that these biomarkers develop years and years before the start of the memory problem, and there is currently no way to stop, this disease from happening just because of a positive blood-based biomarker. It is being done in the clinical trials, which I'll describe to you in a few minutes. But I would not recommend this checking this blood-based biomarker outside of formal memory evaluation in someone who has memory symptoms. Okay, next. So, but in the future, one of the hopeful things is that I go to my primary doctor, they check my blood tests, my hemoglobin A1C, my PSA, all that stuff. And they said, "Oh, so Dr. Tan, are you having some memory issues?" And if I say, "Actually, yes, I'm getting forgetful and I'm worried that then they might do some cognitive tests on me." And if my primary care doctor or a neurologist or geriatrician or what have you feel like they're convinced that there might be something going on, they might be like, "We need to take a sample of your blood and we'll send it to the lab for a blood-based biomarker test." And based on the result, if it's high probability, he or she, my primary doctor might say, "I'm sorry to say, but you have Alzheimer's disease diagnosis and we should start therapy right away." Or they might say, "I don't know what you're worried about. Your blood biomarkers are negative. You don't have Alzheimer's disease. You're fine." Or somewhere in between where they would do other blood tests. This is not the current. This is potentially the future, but this is not 2025 standard of care yet. But I just want to give you sort of a preview of the future if and when we develop more effective treatments to prevent people who are biomarker positive from developing Alzheimer's disease in the future. Okay, next. Okay, so let's talk about research and treatments. Okay, next. So these are the currently approved Alzheimer's disease medications in the market. So the Nepazil, also called Aricept, ribostigmine, galantamine. These are all FDA approved. They're generic now, so they're pretty inexpensive, and they all act in the same way. They increase the acetylcholine, which is the protein that called neurotransmitter that brain cells or nerve cells use to communicate with each other. So they prevent the breakdown in that communication place where they start to communicate, well, the place where nerve cells communicate with each other, and therefore can improve memory function by a little bit, not dramatically, but it can and does improve memory in a lot of our patients. Memantine acts differently because it prevents the overexcitation of the brain cells or the nerve cells by the NMDA, we call it. So it acts differently, and it's only approved for moderate to severe Alzheimer's disease. Donepezil, ribostigmine, galantamine can treat anywhere from mild to late stage Alzheimer's disease. There's also a combination pill. These pills are also available in pills as well as in transdermal or patch. So tried and true, it's been around for a while. And it's the first line treatment still for Alzheimer's disease. Okay, next. There are side effects, even though they're mostly well tolerated, mostly gastrointestinal. It can slow down the heart rate. It can make someone start remembering their dreams very vividly, etc. But for the most part, it's well tolerated. And again, it's been used for a very long time. Okay, next. But as I told you, these medications, all they do is treat the symptoms, right? Help you remember a little better, function a little bit more independently, but they don't change or affect the mechanisms that lead to Alzheimer's disease. And these are listed here. So for each one of these mechanisms, I can tell you that there is a drug that is targeting them. So it's beyond the scope of this medication and certainly beyond my memory to memorize all of the hundreds of medications that are being tested for each of these. But just know that the lack of effective treatment for Alzheimer's disease to stop it is not because of lack of trying. There's a very big prize waiting for whoever or the drug company or the biotech that discovers a cure for this medication. There's a lot of research going on, but just know that it's a complex disease because even if you treat one or two of these, there are other things that could be making the disease move forward. Okay, next. And this is what happens if you don't treat the disease, right? The mini mental state exam score, which is a memory test, goes down, over a few years. Okay, next. With the Donepezil and other symptomatic medication, it improves the memory a bit, but it still goes down, and the slope does not change. You basically end up in 5 years where you would have been with or without treatment. Next. And with disease modifying therapies or DMT, that is the goal, is to decrease the slope of this course. Although it doesn't stop it, it does make the slope less acute and hopefully more time spent in the mild or moderate stages of the disease rather than in the late stage. Okay, next. And this is currently for the past, I would say 10 years or so, even longer, been the target. This is a close-up of the amyloid plaque. This is the target of a lot of the medications that have come out recently. Okay, next. Amyloid interventions I'm going to talk more about the lecanemab and donanemab, but know that those are not the only ways that researchers are attacking amyloid. There are base or beta secretase inhibitors. There are alpha secretase inhibitors. They attack this amyloid from formation to increased clearance and everything. There's a lot of different ways. They also try to block the bad effects of amyloid when it forms, like inflammation, etc. Okay, next. Next. And I just want to talk to you about lecanemab. Lecanemab is a disease-modifying therapy, or DMT, that's approved by the FDA in 2023. It acts by clearing those amyloid plaques, right? The fibrillar as well as the deposited version. It's given every 2 weeks or twice a month by IV infusion. And what is shown is that it lowers the rate of or the speed of cognitive and functional decline in people with mild Alzheimer's disease, or MCI. Okay, next. And this is what it looks like when they showed the results to the FDA and other things, is that they found that they improve, from their cognition compared to before. Okay. Oh, sorry. This is actually the slide showing the amyloid, the amount of amyloid in the brain, and it shows you that the amyloid dramatically goes down after the treatment is stopped. So it's very effective in clearing amyloid in the brain. Okay, next. The problem in this medication is that the effect size, or the degree by which it improves cognition or memory thinking, which is what we all care about, is not that dramatic, right? So you can see that while it is statistically significant, p less than 0.001, it's not as dramatic as what you would hope, and certainly not as dramatic as the degree by which it cleared amyloid. Okay, next. In fact, if you compare it to donepezil, which is Aricept, the green is improvement. The orange line below the line is worsening. You can see that donepezil actually improved memory. Not dramatically, but it did improve. Whereas lecanemab, it actually did not improve. It only slowed down the progression. So again, I tell my patients who are interested in lecanemab, this type of medication is not going to improve the memory, but it may slow down the disease. That's really what we're hoping for here. Okay, next. The other thing to consider is that these medications, because they're immunotherapy, they use antibodies to scoop out and clear the brain of the amyloid. It can cause something called ARIA, which is amyloid-related imaging abnormalities, which in plain terms is brain swelling and brain bleeding. So this shows you what it looks like on the MRI. And on the left side, it shows you what the patient will feel: headache, confusion, visual changes, etc., etc. And in clinical trials, some of these complications have resulted in death. Not many. Most of these are reversible. Most of them are asymptomatic. But as you can see here, there is an MRI schedule. So besides going to the infusion center every 2 weeks, you also need to get serial MRIs to make sure that you don't have brain bleeding or swelling, in which case the treatment would have to be stopped and observed before restarting or stopping it altogether. Okay, next. So, how often does this scary thing happen? Well, it depends on a lot of factors, but one factor is how many copies of the ApoE4 gene you have. If you have one copy, out of 100 patients, 5 develop ARIA-E, which is edema, 12 develop ARIA-H, which is hemorrhage. If you have one copy, then it goes up, and then if you have 2 copies, it becomes pretty worrisome. So again, there are other things like if you're on anticoagulants, you're not a candidate for this, etc. So there's a lot of things. That's why you need to talk to a memory specialist before you consider these therapies. Okay, next. The other medication is called donanemab. Donanemab is a cousin of lecanemab, but it acts slightly differently. It has also been approved by the FDA to treat mild Alzheimer's disease or mild cognitive impairment. And it has shown, again, modest improvement in measures like the IADRS, CDR sum of boxes. And they have shown to the FDA that with treatment, it actually slows the disease progression and, compared to placebo, right? That's what they need to show. And the safety is acceptable, even though it's not 100% safe. It's safe enough to be administered to patients. Okay, next. Just like lecanemab, the problem here is the effect size, right? So it's something called minimally clinically important improvement or worsening. The effect size is below that, meaning that the caregiver or even the patient's physician in people who are received this may not really notice a dramatic change in their memory and thinking, right? But the question is whether long term is this going to slow down the disease from going from moderate, mild to moderate, moderate to severe. The jury's still out because this is a relatively new medication, but those people who are getting it are being observed to see if long term does it actually help, and of course, considering the potential harms as well. Okay, next. So for those of you who are interested in comparing the donanemab versus lecanemab, just know that they're cousins, and for us, we can't say that one is superior to the other from an effect size standpoint. But just know that the donanemab is given monthly instead of every 2 weeks in the case of lecanemab. That's, I think, one huge difference for our patients who are traveling the country or are very active. That may be, a reason to give the donanemab over lecanemab. The costs are written here. They're both very expensive, 26,500 for lecanemab, 32,000 for a year for like the donanemab, and this doesn't count the doctor's visits, the MRIs, the blood tests, etc. And all other main difference is that lecanemab or Leqembi, according to manufacturers, we need to be given long term, i.e., indefinitely. The donanemab, they still don't know. They say right now that it can be stopped after about a year, but that's what lecanemab people also said to us when they came out to market and they changed. So I don't know what the donanemab will if it will change or not. So anyway, so that's comparing the donanemab and lecanemab. Okay, next. So I'm just like Monica, I'm running out of time, but I just want to tell you that clinical trial have different phases, right? There's a preclinical phase one, phase two, phase three. So what you want to concentrate on when you're looking at the clinicaltrials.gov, which Monica showed you, is the phase three trials, because phase one, phase two, definitely you can volunteer for that, but just know that those are pretty far from going to market still. It's more establishing safety rather than efficacy. Okay, next. Also know that there's a lot of different types of mechanisms of action that are being targeted for Alzheimer's disease. Okay, next. And this is a snapshot of the number of molecules or compounds or medications that are being tried from phase one on the outer circle, phase two, middle circle, phase three in the phase three in the last circle. Okay, 164 active clinical trials for Alzheimer's disease. Okay, next. All right, so I'm going to skip this one, the interest of time. This is just more details. Next. Just know that the failure rate over the past 20 or so more years is 99.6 failure rate for Alzheimer's disease. So this is not an easy disease to treat. Next. I'm going to skip this one again, the interest of time, because I think we all know that it has a very long preclinical diseases. This is where the disease is being targeted now. Okay, next. And just to snapshot some of the trials that are ongoing that are particularly interesting, at least to me, is the HEAD 345 study. This is a study that looks at participants who are 55 to 80 years who have preclinical Alzheimer's disease, meaning they have elevated amyloid in their brain by PET scan, but they don't have memory problems yet. So this is a pretty long trial, multi-year trial that gives lecanemab, which is the medication that I just talked to you about, IV infusion, and see whether these people, when they clear the amyloid in their brain, whether this will stop them from developing the memory problem and whether it's safe, et cetera, et cetera. So the enrollment has been completed October last year, so it's going to take a few years for these results to come out, but it's interesting because it will show us if blood biomarkers or imaging biomarkers will actually help us target people who have amyloid positive but don't have memory issues for treatments before the memory problems start. Okay, next. This is just looking at again, that figure I showed you. They're targeting people very, very early in the disease. In fact, before the memory problems start. So that's the HEAD 345 study. Okay, next. And then this is another therapy. It's a combination therapy. So my prediction is that hopefully in a few years, it's not just lecanemab or donanemab or that monoclonal antibody for amyloid. It will have to be a combination of anti-amyloid, anti-tau, because I think both of them cause bad things to happen, right? So there's a current study that's going on now that adds this medication called E2814 anti-MTBR tau monoclonal antibody, and it adds this to the anti-amyloid antibody to see if combination of anti-amyloid and anti-tau would produce a more significant or more dramatic effect in terms of reducing the rate of progression of the disease. Okay, next. A lot of people ask me about GLP-1s, which is Ozempic and Ozempic is semaglutide, and it's an very interesting drug. There are studies that show that people who are using GLP-1s are more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease, but know that these are observational studies, so you don't know if it's just an association or if it's really related. But there is some science behind it because the brains have actually insulin receptors. In fact, you've heard of the brain being called, a form of diabetes, and insulin resistance being a cause of Alzheimer's disease. We don't know, right? But we know that this GLP-1s like semaglutide or Ozempic, they do sensitize the cells for insulin. So whether it affects the brain or not, we don't know. Okay, next. Next. Okay, next. Next. So just know that there is, I'll skip this one so that we have more time for questions. Next. So just know that there is this study called Evoke and Evoke Plus that actually checks, that's actually testing an oral form of semaglutide or Ozempic versus placebo to see if it changes cognition and function in people who have mild Alzheimer's disease or MCI. So this is the first study that checks this that is testing this type of medication to see if it does that. It's a very popular medication for weight loss, for diabetes, but whether it can also affect dementia, we will know in a few years. So that's another exciting study. Okay, next. Okay, this is the end of my presentation. In summary, in terms of Alzheimer's disease research, biomarkers are one of the major breakthroughs that we've had, but we also have neuroimaging biomarkers. Accuracy is still being determined. And then in terms of the Alzheimer's disease pipeline, combination therapy is likely going to be the future. Just like with HIV, with diabetes, with cancers, it's a cocktail of medications that's given to produce a more meaningful and lasting result. Okay, next. This is just my team from Cedars-Sinai. Next. Thank you for your attention. One last slide. Next, please. Is we do have a MCI or mild cognitive impairment boot camp at Cedars-Sinai on June 21st. If you're interested, feel free to call this number or email this number, and it's going to be on site at Cedars-Sinai. It's a whole day, and it helps people who have a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment know more about this condition. And I'll send the flyer to Cassandra so that you can also it's easy for you to sign up for those who are interested. Okay, that's it. I'm ready for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tan. Yes, we'll make sure to have that flyer up once we get the recording on our website, so you will all be notified so you can sign up for that class. And we have a couple of questions in the chat, and it looks like there's a lot of questions in regards to MRIs. And it says, is there a specific brain MRI, and do they show the dementia signs on the MRI for this purpose?
So the MRI will not show you whether you have Alzheimer's disease or not, but it will show you whether you've had silent strokes. It will show you if you have something called a meningioma, which is a benign lesion that can cause memory issues, and also show you, like I showed you in the slide, whether you've had parts of your brain that had starting to shrink. And if it's the hippocampus, it can be indicative of early Alzheimer's disease.
Okay. And then another question is, is my husband was seen at Cedars and only got a physical test with no MRI. They were told they do not qualify for any new drugs. Is there a way they can get another referral within Cedars?
So Cedars is a big place, just like the other thing. I don't know where your husband was seen. You could go to your primary doctor and get and certainly get a referral to Cedars. So we're Cedars Neurology. There's a different Cedars, of course, Cedars Medical Group, which is a private practice outside Cedars. We're the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center Neurology. If you, yeah, happy to see your patient, your husband. There are several of us, may not be me, but just make a referral to our program if you're interested.
Okay. And then can patients continue to take Donzepil while getting lecanemab infusions?
Yes, that's a good question, and the answer is yes. In the clinical trials, people who were on the lecanemab, the donanemab, still got the Nepazil, so there is no problem getting that those two medications at the same time.
Okay. Do PET scans today only look at plaques and not tangles?
So they can do both, right? But the ones that are clinically available is looking at amyloid. So there's a tau PET, as I showed you, but those are very expensive right now and are not typically reimbursed by insurance. We have them at Cedars, but we don't personally. I haven't ordered one because they're very expensive, and also the amyloid PET scan is sufficient for making a diagnosis.
Okay. And I think this question is who's eligible to give the medications to treat someone with Alzheimer's? I think that's in reference to the two intravenous ones.
Yeah, so it depends on the health system where you're at, but at Cedars, either a neurologist or a geriatrician are both qualified to screen patients for eligibility and also for ongoing screening. Typically, at least for us, that's the limitation. In most places, I think that is the case. But I don't know if general internists or family doctors are infusing this in other centers, but at least for us, it's neurologists and geriatricians.
Okay. We've got two more questions. Was there any study that relates Alzheimer's to menopause?
Not directly, but we know that just like heart disease, after menopause, for whatever reason, the incidence of Alzheimer's disease in women goes up. So some feel it's because of the loss of estrogen, the protective effect of estrogen. For some people feel that because they are getting older. We don't know, right? But yes, there is an increase in rates of Alzheimer's disease after menopause.
Okay. And then have you come across any studies on dementia and treatment with CBD or microdosing of mushrooms?
So these compounds are very interesting. We get a lot of questions about them, but in terms of treatment, my understanding is that they're mostly used to treat behaviors, not memory. So I've never heard that CBD or any of these medications improve memory. In fact, CBD, as you know, is related to marijuana, right? And marijuana has been shown to definitely make your memory worse. So that's no question. So, but for behaviors, I've had some patients who give their loved ones like CBD gummies, and again, I tell them that the studies haven't done, and also how much of the active compound is actually there because it's not regulated.
Okay, great. There's actually a couple more questions. One, is there any evidence that doing puzzles and staying intellectually active really is helpful, or is it just hopeful advice?
So there is evidence that leisure activities, not necessarily doing puzzles or Sudoku or Wordle, is going to prevent you from getting dementia. But certainly, get increased socialization has been associated with lower risk for developing dementia. So if you have a choice of doing the crossword puzzle or Wordle or going out there and socializing or just like this, listening to talks, I would choose this one, right? Because there is evidence that people, for example, seniors, for example, who attend adult education classes in their community colleges, they've been shown to lower their risk of dementia. So again, it's an association. No one established proof yet, but it makes sense, right? Because you use your brain, you communicate, you socialize, and it decreases your risk of developing dementia.
All right, thank you. And then also someone asked, can you please explain the connection between insomnia and Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah, oh God. You have an extra hour, Cassandra? So it's a big topic, and but just briefly, I can tell you that sleep is one of the things that have been implicated in increased risk for dementia. In fact, people who are dependent on sleep medications like Ambien and benzo like Valium and Xanax have been associated with higher risk of developing dementia. Also, insomnia, meaning lack of sleep or lack of good quality sleep, or for example, sleep apnea, have been associated with risk of Alzheimer's disease. One mechanism that's very intriguing is something called the glymphatic system. You've heard of the lymphatic system, but the glymphatic is the brain's mechanism of clearing toxins, amyloid, tau, when we sleep. And the glymphatic system is very, very active while we're sleeping, and that's when we clear all the toxins. So that's one theory why people with sleep problem, insomnia, don't get enough sleep, have higher rates of developing Alzheimer's disease. So get your sleep, and make sure if you're sleepy this afternoon, please take a nap.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tan. Thank you for being here and taking the time to share everything on the latest of research. And I want to thank everybody for being with us today. We're going to provide some slides from the speakers or certain handouts from speakers. So you will be getting a notification when the recording is available. We also want to make a note of our final evaluation. So if you all can please provide your feedback in regards to the conference, it is really helpful. We hope that you leave feeling more informed, more connected, and above all, more hopeful. The strength and the openness shared today from experts, care partners, and especially those living with memory loss remind us that this journey, while challenging, is one we don't have to take alone. So I hope that you get connected with us to make sure that you're well informed. And if today's conversation inspired you, we kindly invite you to support our ongoing work with a donation of any size. Your generosity helps us continue offering resources, programs, and community spaces like this for those who need them the most. On behalf of our entire team, thank you for your time, your presence, and your care. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again.